Chapter 1992 The Early Bird Catches the Worm. Big trouble. Emperor God Golden Lion knew how scary Sword Emperor was. He could offend anyone, but he happened to offend Sword Emperor, and he just hit it directly in vain. Emperor God Golden Lion felt bitter, but mostly he was glad. He was glad that Sword Emperor held back and didn't kill him directly. Otherwise, Golden Lion, I'm asking you, are you willing to let him off the hook? Jian Wushuang asked with a deep voice, and there was chilliness in his eyes. In the beginning he was considered gentle. Who knew Emperor God Golden Lion would behave so recklessly and blindly? Jian Wushuang of course wouldn't treat him politely anymore. Yes, Emperor God Golden Lion didn't dare to complain further. Hurry up and get lost. Jian Wushuang roared. Emperor God Golden Lion immediately left and didn't delay any further. Thank you for the help, Sword Emperor. The owner of Sky Sword Mountain immediately bowed to Jian Wushuang. No big deal. You and I are friends? Jian Wushuang waved casually. Oh yeah. You came to Jianghu Sword Mansion for the 9 sword steals, right? Yes, the owner of Sky Sword Mountain nodded. I originally wanted to try my luck. Who knew there was a test at every sword steal and not just anyone could get it? I was in Jianghu Sword Mansion for a few days, but I didn't get any sword steal. I met this Golden Lion and nearly lost my life. There's a test at every sword steal? Jian Wushuang was surprised, but it wasn't unexpected. Tianjin, as you have been here in Jianghu Sword Mansion for quite some time, you should have come across a few sword steals, right? Yeah. I found 3 sword steals in the past few days. But it is a pity that I didn't get any one of them. The owner of Sky Sword Mountain smiled bitterly. Can you bring me to the 3 sword steals then? Jian Wushuang asked. Of course, the owner of Sky Sword Mountain naturally wouldn't refuse. Under the lead of the owner of Sky Sword Mountain, Jian Wushuang immediately went to where the 3 sword steals were located. Jian Wushuang arrived at the first sword steal very quickly. That is the sword steal? Jian Wushuang looked at a green steel towering in the middle of the barren field. The green steel was huge and it was made of unique green crystals. Even though Jian Wushuang was experienced, he couldn't tell what the green crystal was. The green crystal gave out an ancient aura, and there was a spiraling tunnel underneath. One could enter the sword steal through the tunnel to sit for the test. At the very moment, there were 3 cultivators by the side of the green sword steal. The 3 cultivators were an emperor god and 2 sir gods. When they saw Jian Wushuang's arrival, their eyes dilated in shock. Greetings, Sword Emperor. Greetings, Sword Emperor. The 3 of them bowed politely simultaneously. Come on, Jian Wushuang waved. There's someone in the sword steal now. Yes, the emperor god replied. Master Wu just went in not too long ago. Master Wu? Jian Wushuang was taken by surprise. In Eternal Chaotic World, before Jian Wushuang rose, before Jian Yi and Lord Sound Spirit and the others appeared, there was only a total of 15 great emperors. 13 of them were from Sanctuary Alliance, and there were 2 out of Sanctuary Alliance. It was widely known by the public. In the Great Eternal Chaotic World, it was normal that there would be 1 or 2 great emperors that people didn't know. For instance, Master Wu wasn't famous back then until the ancient battlefield appeared. He started wandering on the ancient battlefield and gained fame in the public. He was extremely powerful and was listed at the 8th place on Heaven and Earth Supreme Ranking list. Master Wu is good with a sword too. It is very normal that he came to wander in Jianghu Sword Mansion. Jian Wushuang nodded faintly. Sword Emperor, only 1 person is permitted to enter to sit for the test in the sword steal at one time. As Master Wu is sitting for the test in the sword steal, we can only wait outside, the owner of Sky Sword Mountain explained. Alright then, Jian Wushuang smiled but wasn't bothered much. The time flew past. In the blink of an eye, half a day had passed. There was finally movement in the huge sword steal. The sword steal quivered slightly and was suddenly diminished at a terrifyingly fast speed. Looking at the sight, Jian Wushuang and the others immediately understood that Master Wu had definitely passed the test. So, the sword steal belonged to him. We came late. Jian Wushuang let out a sigh, but he couldn't do anything about it either. Master Wu had already taken the sword steal as he had arrived first. It was Master Wu's ability to pass through the test and obtain the sword steal. Hence, Jian Wushuang couldn't do anything about it. As for the owner of Sky Sword Mountain, Sir God Mou and the rest could only be envious. The tall sword steal vanished into thin air and it was replaced by a brawny man who was 3 meters tall. The tall man carried a broad and heavy sword on his back. He himself was just like a mountain, and the fierce aura given out by the mountain not only made one feel pressured but also eerie. The tall, brawny man was Master Wu. Jian Wushuang stood there with his hands on his back when he looked at Master Wu. Master Wu felt Jian Wushuang gaze and he looked back. Both of their eyes met and the void instantly froze. The owner of Sky Sword Mountain, Sir God Mou, and the others around them gulped and held their breaths. Master Wu was a great emperor. As for Jian Wushuang, he was also a superb existence. He had obviously already broken through. His fighting power shouldn't be second to great emperors either. In front of the two superb existents they were, of course, nervous. At the same time they were surprised. Would the two of them fight here? Judging from their behavior they did look like they were going to fight. But in the end, let's go. Jian Wushuang suddenly turned and told the owner of Sky Sword Mountain. The owner of Sky Sword Mountain didn't hesitate and immediately turned to leave. Master Wu reined in his gaze and left as well. There were only the three cultivators who were waiting outside the sword stele earlier, left standing at the original spot. Then the three cultivators had yet to calm down. I thought Sword Emperor would fight with Master Wu over the sword stele, but it didn't seem like it just now. Humph, Master Wu is a true great emperor in 8th place on Heaven and Earth Supreme ranking list. But Sword Emperor, although he broke through, I reckon his true power has barely passed the threshold of a great emperor's. His sword servant isn't with him either. What does he have to take things away from Master Wu? That's true. Sword Emperor wouldn't ask for a snub when he knew that he wasn't his match. The three of them chatted casually. Chapter 1993 Master Wu, Jiuju Sword Mansion in the broad void above. Tianjin, how far away are we from the second sword stele? Jian Wushuang asked. Not too far away. With our traveling speed we will arrive in half an hour, the owner of Sky Sword Mountain said politely. Alright then. Let's head over to the second sword stele, Jian Wushuang smiled. The owner of Sky Sword Mountain naturally obeyed. As for the reason why Jian Wushuang didn't fight with Master Wu to get the sword stele, the owner of Sky Sword Mountain didn't ask even though he was curious. Half an hour later, Jian Wushuang arrived at the second sword stele. But Jian Wushuang only saw a barren land when he arrived. He didn't see any sword stele. How could this be? When I left, the second sword stele was still towering here. Why did it disappear? The owner of Sky Sword Mountain creased his eyebrows. It seems like we are late, Jian Wushuang smiled helplessly. Master Wu had taken the first sword stele earlier. Then someone else had taken the second stele as well. Then there was only the third one left. Come on, let's head over to the third sword stele. The three of them continued their journey and they soon arrived at where the third sword stele was located. It was also the last sword stele that the owner of Sky Sword Mountain knew of. He was lucky enough. The sword stele was still towering there. Although there were people trying to pass the test to obtain the sword stele, they failed to do so. Sword Emperor, the person who sat for the test in the sword stele came out, the owner of Sky Sword Mountain said. Jian Wushuang nodded. He saw a Sir God exited from the space whirlpool of the sword stele and he looked disappointed. He obviously hadn't passed the test. Without hesitation, Jian Wushuang walked towards the sword stele. There were a few cultivators around the sword stele. They were looking at Jian Wushuang as he walked over. Jian Wushuang arrived before the sword stele and prepared to enter the space whirlpool to sit for the test. Just then, swoosh, a figure plunged over from afar. In two simple flashes he appeared next to Jian Wushuang and before the sword stele. Jian Wushuang creased his eyebrows and looked at the person who came. In a black robe, tall and brawny, carrying a broad and heavy sword. It was Master Wu that Jian Wushuang had seen not too long ago. Such a coincidence, Jian Wushuang smiled faintly. Jian Wushuang already met Master Wu at the first sword stele. However, they didn't have any contact then. Then as he arrived at the third sword stele, Master Wu rushed over too. The test in this sword stele will take it first. You can wait until I am done before you head out to try, Master Wu said coldly in an indisputable tone. You first? What? Jian Wushuang couldn't help but scoff at him. The test in the sword stele couldn't be taken by two people at the same time. Only one at a time. Under such circumstances, whoever headed in first would have the absolute opportunity. Because if the first person passed the test, the sword stele would belong to him. What chance would the second person have? Jian Wushuang had no alternative for the first sword stele. But, Master Wu, everything in on the basis of time of arrival, Jian Wushuang said coldly. Time of arrival? I'm sorry, there is no such thing in my head. Speak with power. Get out of my way, Master Wu bellowed and intended to take a stride forward. Just then there was a sudden gale. Master Wu's face grew grave. He realized that there was a shapeless sword intention that aimed at his skull. He hauled his footsteps. Humph. He humphed coldly and the sword intention instantly collapsed and dispersed. Master Wu's gaze was cold. He looked at Jian Wushuang like an ancient beast. Jian Wushuang, your sword servant is not with you. With you alone you are not my match. You'd better know where you stand. Otherwise. Otherwise what? Jian Wushuang sneered. Master Wu, you think too highly of yourself. You are courting death. Master Wu was then raging in anger. There was a boundless sword intention that burst out like a tsunami. The sea of sword intention filled the universe. The entire spacetime instantly froze. Master Wu suddenly drew his sword in the middle of the sword intention. The moment he struck the sword, it was as though the entire universe pressed down on Jian Wushuang. The terrifyingly huge sword shadow extended its length across tens of thousands of miles in the sea of sword intention. Master Wu, who was at the 8th place on Heaven and Earth Supreme Ranking list, he either won't attack or he'll attack with full force. The sword principle is pretty imposing. Jian Wushuang smiled faintly, but he didn't panic. The terrifyingly huge shadow that was tens of thousands of miles in length appeared before him, and he pointed with his right index finger. The ancient god's 8th finger, the universe finger. One finger to shake heaven and earth. Rumble. The void gradually collapsed. Under the boundless divine power and power of ancient tribe bloodline, there was a huge finger that looked like it extended from ancient times in the collapsing void. The very next moment, it collided directly with the terrifyingly huge sword shadow. Bang. There was a loud bang and everything in the world faded away. The surrounding void shattered and the entire universe was lifted. Just like the owner of Sky Sword Mountain, Sir God Mou and the others, they scattered around long ago. Luckily they had retreated earlier, otherwise the repercussions of their collision could easily have wiped them out. Everything had become nothingness. It was only the sword steel left towering there. Although the repercussions of both attacks were fierce, it couldn't damage the sword steel at all. Swoosh, 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 swoosh. The 5 brilliant golden lights suddenly lit up. The 5 resplendent golden lights were like 5 shooting stars that struck across the void and appeared before Master Wu. Master Wu looked cold as he wielded his broadsword continuously. Every stroke contained hundreds of millions of genes that could easily break mountains and split rivers. Clang, 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 clang. There were 5 continuous clanging noises. All 5 Hongjun golden swords under Jian Wushuang's manipulation of divine power attacked. Although Master Wu resisted the 5 continuous attacks, he couldn't help but take one step back. Jian Wushuang, I belittled you. I never expected you to be so powerful after breaking through and becoming an almighty. You live up to your reputation as an inverse cultivator. However, you must be dreaming if you want to win victory with power alone. Master Wu's voice was cold. Just as he spoke, he raised the broadsword with both his hands at the same time. Vroom vroom vroom. The terrifying extermination aura instantly concentrated on the broadsword. The surrounding universe drowned in an extermination region. Chapter 1994 Face Off. This stroke. Jian Wushuang's expression grew in distress. He could feel that Master Wu's stroke was unusual. It wasn't just how strong the sword intention and sword posture was, but most importantly, the extermination power that it brought about. The extermination power signified that his comprehension of extermination doctrine had already reached the peak in Eternal Chaotic World. He had reached the level 9 standard in Doctrine Palace. The level 9 in Doctrine Palace. The extreme limit of doctrine. All great emperors in Eternal Chaotic World reached that level. It was also an important reason as to why Great Emperor was far greater than Emperor God. For instance, Jian Wushuang's comprehension of doctrine was far behind Master Wu's. Because of the addition of extermination power, Master Wu made the stroke even more powerful. It was so powerful that it shocked Jian Wushuang. However, although Jian Wushuang was shocked, he wasn't fearful. Emperor Sword Principle. Vroom. Jian Wushuang raised Blood Mountain sword high in the sky. There was a bolt of Emperor manner that swept out. In an instant, Jian Wushuang became an emperor that ruled everything, and he was holding the Emperor's sword. As Jian Wushuang wielded the Emperor's sword, he immediately displayed a terrifying power. 2 bolts of terrifying sword intention. 2 strokes of sword shadows that could end the world. One was an Emperor's sword and the other was an extermination sword. They collided. Virum. The 2 bolts of sword intention hit, and there was no vigorous bang as one might imagine. There were only noises of sword intention and divine power pressing and shattering. Both Jian Wushuang and Master Wu were raging in anger. At the moment when the 2 sword shadows had yet to call victory or defeat, they competed again. Then both of them fought in close combat, and they were meeting force with force. You do not know what death is. How dare you meet force with force? Master Wu raged in anger. He was using a heavy sword. A heavy sword was thick and heavy, and it was best at pressing with power. However, it wasn't good in terms of speed. As Jian Wushuang fought in close combat with him, he would have relied on the flexibility of his sword principle and his speed under normal circumstances. But now Jian Wushuang opted to meet force with force. Without any pattern, competing in terms of strength and also power of sword principle. "Come on!" Master Wu bellowed. "No one is afraid." Jian Wushuang roared too. The two of them fought vigorously in the void. Clang, 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 clang. There was a continuous metal clanging noise that was loud and clear. Every single collision contained boundless divine power. The fight plunged the void into complete chaos. The owner of Sky Sword Mountain, Sir God Mou, and the others were dumbfounded at the sight. Especially when they saw Jian Wushuang meeting force with force against Master Wu without having the lower hand. They were astonished at the fact that he didn't lose his imposing manner. One should know that Master Wu had gained fame through victory in fierce fights with his opponents. The reason why he won was not only because of his strength and sword principle that were powerful, but more importantly because his divine power was strong too. The repercussion of the collision was also powerful. After continuous collisions, any great emperor with weaker divine power wouldn't be able to stay standing. However, Master Wu wasn't fearful because his divine power was strong. Even if he were to hit more than 100 times, he would at most have a mild injury. However, although Master Wu's divine power was strong, he didn't know that Jian Wushuang's divine power was even more ridiculously strong than his. He was an inverse cultivator. The seventh step of inverse cultivation gave him a perfect chaotic divine body. His divine body was entirely substantiated with divine power, which was extremely powerful. Maybe, in terms of divine power strength, it might not be able to match Master Wu's. But his defense armor, 5-gem armor, was far stronger than the chaotic divine treasure that Master Wu was wearing. The truly important part was still his constitution. Forget about the fact that it was difficult to damage his divine body when he fought directly with Master Wu. Even if his divine body was injured, he could instantly recover it with divine power. Injury simple didn't exist in inverse cultivator at this step. As long as one's divine power was sufficient, he would never be injured, nor would he die. It was really even more powerful than Master Wu's. As expected, Master Wu and Jian Wushuang already fought forcefully and hit one another, over a few hundred times on the battlefield. Every single hit was a full-force hit. The repercussions of the impact caused injury to Master Wu's divine body and his aura grew weaker. But what about Jian Wushuang? He was still billowing with fighting power. His aura was not diminishing but growing stronger instead. The power in his sword didn't diminish either. How is it possible? This guy is powerful, but how could his defense power be this strong too? We hit one another a few hundred times but his divine body didn't have any injury at all? How could one have such a terrifying divine body? Master Wu was in disbelief. The situation then shocked him. His divine body was damaged and his fighting power was affected. On the other hand, Jian Wushuang became stronger. If they were to persist, there would be no doubt in the result. Jian Wushuang, I shall let you have this sword Stele as you are not weak. Master Wu bellowed and seized the chance to leave immediately. Jian Wushuang stood on the spot as he watched Master Wu leave. He didn't intend to chase after him. 8th place on Heaven and Earth Supreme Ranking list, Master Wu, he is really powerful, Jian Wushuang complimented in silence. Besides the trump cards like River Mountain Map, Secret Skill of Star Palace, Star Destruction Skill, he used most of his other skills. Even so, he was barely Master Wu's match. In the end, he relied on his advantage in his substitution to meet force with force. Then he had managed to beat off Master Wu. The fighting power of a great emperor was really unusual. Jian Wushuang could tell that Master Wu had some trump cards that he didn't play. Although I didn't have the upper hand, at least I have a brand new understanding of my power after this fight with Master Wu. With my strength and power that was stronger by one notch than any ordinary great emperor, with all my skills, I should be mid-range among all great emperors on Heaven and Earth Supreme Ranking list, but not the ones at the bottom, Jian Wushuang smiled. He had just broken through not too long ago. He merely relied on his transformed substitution and his divine power to reach where he was. From then on he had great space for improvement. Forget about the others, in terms of sword principle and comprehension of doctrine, he had great space for improvement. One should know that his comprehension of spacetime doctrine and reincarnation doctrine was only at the standard of level 8 in Doctrine Palace then. When he was fighting against the other great emperors, they were all on the level 9. Jian Wushuang had the lower hand in terms of that. Don't be in a hurry. I just broke through. I have to take my time. First, the 9 sword steels in Juju Sword Mansion are a great opportunity to me. Jian Wushuang lifted the corners of his lip as he fixed his gaze upon the sword steel before him. Chapter 1995 Sword Steel. The fight between Jian Wushuang and Master Wu earlier was extremely ferocious. God knows how many times the surrounding void had collapsed and shattered. The ground was horrible to look at too, as it had become a ruin. However, after such a ferocious fight, the green sword steel was still towering in perfect conditions. Although there were sword lights that hit the sword steel, it wasn't damaged at all. I wonder what material is the sword steel made of. How could it be so tough? Jian Wushuang thought to himself in astonishment while he passed through the spacetime whirlpool and entered the sword steel. In the nearby void, a speeding figure stopped. The figure naturally belonged to Master Wu. Then Master Wu's face grew grave. I never expected Jian Wushuang would be so powerful after breakthrough. In terms of power explosion, he was much stronger than me. His divine power is even scarier, Master Wu muttered. After the earlier battle, he roughly understood Jian Wushuang's power. Although Jian Wushuang had just broken through, he could still be considered as a Sir God. But his fighting power was absolutely not weaker than a great emperor's, and he was not even the ones at the bottom among all great emperors. If it wasn't because his comprehension of doctrines was weaker, Jian Wushuang absolutely could be at the peak among all great emperors. Luckily, although I fought with him, I didn't defend him. Otherwise, when he breaks through again in the future, or when his comprehension towards doctrine heightened, he'll be in big trouble if he remembers me. Inverse cultivators are so scary. Master Wu complimented and continued to leave. It was an empty field inside the sword steel. The test in the sword steel was actually very simple. There was a sword spirit in the sword steel. The person who sits for the test in the sword steel would be fighting against the sword spirit. The sword spirit would maintain its strength at the same level as the cultivator. Then, it would call victory or defeat judging purely by sword principle. As long as one defeated the sword spirit, it meant that he passed the test. The sword principle played by the sword spirit was according to the realm of the cultivator. In terms of the realm, Jian Wushuang was merely a Sir God, which was an early-stage chaotic realm in ancient times. The sword spirit naturally treated him as a cultivator of that level. Although the sword principle it played was meticulous, it could only compare favorably to an emperor god who was good with swords. As for Jian Wushuang, although his understanding of swords was slightly weaker than a great emperor #S, he was absolutely at the peak of all emperor gods. He defeated the sword spirit with ease and he naturally passed the test. The moment Jian Wushuang passed the test, he possessed the qualifications to cultivate the sword steel. He spent some time and cultivated the sword steel with ease. On the ruin that was too terrible to look at, the owner of Sky Sword Mountain, Sir God Mou and the rest waited in silence. In no time Jian Wushuang walked out of the sword steel. When he walked out, the sword steel diminished in size at a terrifyingly fast speed. Then it merged into Jian Wushuang's body. The few of them instantly understood that Jian Wushuang had passed the test. Sword Emperor, congratulations. Congratulations. The owner of Sky Sword Mountain, Sir God Mou and the others came forward to congratulate him and they behaved politely. Before that, they had already noticed that Jian Wushuang had broken through his realm and guessed that Jian Wushuang already possessed the fighting power of a great emperor. However, it was merely a guess after all and it had yet to be verified. Even so, they were already very polite to him. But then they saw that Jian Wushuang and Master Wu had fought before their own eyes. There was naturally no doubt about Jian Wushuang's power. He was absolutely a super expert at the great emperor level. This time, thanks to Tianjian and Mou for bringing me. These Chen-Kuan rings are your rewards. There's nothing to do with you next. Goodbye. Jian Wushuang passed a Chen-Kuan ring to the owner of Sky Sword Mountain and waved. The owner of Sky Sword Mountain was surprised. He didn't intend to accept it at first. After all, he only guided the way for Jian Wushuang. Plus, Jian Wushuang had saved his life, so he owed Jian Wushuang a favor. However, he didn't reject it when he looked at Jian Wushuang's expression. The owner of Sky Sword Mountain and Sir God Mou left after that. Jian Wushuang continued his journey in Juju Sword Mansion. On his way he started fiddling with the sword steel. As expected, the sword steel contains a large number of sword principles and they are all meticulous and powerful. Their qualities are not found in the ones in this era, Jian Wushuang muttered. He had already cultivated the sword steel and he could clearly feel the sword principle recorded in the sword steel. Jian Wushuang looked through the sword principles in the sword steel and there was a total of 136 of them. Any one of the 136 of them could shake the universe if put in the current era. It was enough to make countless sword cultivators go crazy. Regrettably, the 136 sword principles were all incomplete. There was merely a fragment of the sword principle in the sword stele. For instance, there was a sword principle named Brother Peacock. The Brother Peacock sword principle consisted of 6 moves, but the sword stele only had a fragment of the 6 sword moves. There wasn't even one complete sword move. In other words, even if Jian Wushuang obtained the sword stele, he couldn't practice any of those sword principles in the sword stele. He couldn't even cultivate one move. They are all incomplete sword principles. What is Sword Geek Juju trying to do? Jian Wushuang creased his eyebrows. Could the 9 sword steles contain incomplete sword principles each, and only one who could gather all 9 will receive the complete sword principles? Jian Wushuang felt that it was possible. Then he started sending messages around to inquire. Since Juju Sword Mansion had come into the world, there were more than 5 sword steles that were taken away. If the sword steles were similar to the one Jian Wushuang had, they only contained fragments of multiple sword principles. The few experts who obtained the sword stele shouldn't be calm. The truth was as such too. When the few experts who had obtained sword steles with sweat and tears realized that the sword steles only contained incomplete sword principles and not even a complete sword move, they couldn't calm themselves down and looked around and asked the others who had obtained the other sword steles. In the end, they came to a conclusion. The sword principles and the sword steles did require combining a few steles together for a complete version. However, there was no need to collect all 9 of them. Under normal circumstances, a sword principle would only be split into 2 or 3 sword steles. Only when they obtained the 2 or 3 sword steles that recorded the sword principle would they be able to cultivate the sword principle. In other words, it was useless to get only 1 sword stele. It seems that I need to figure out ways to get more sword steles. Jian Wushuang creased his eyebrows. Chapter 1996 Incomplete Sword Principle. Jian Wushuang continued to wander in Juju Sword Mansion for the rest of the time. The 9 sword steles in Juju Sword Mansion, although there were 5 that were taken, including Jian Wushuang's, there were 4 remaining that were scattered in various corners. The remaining 4 sword steles were found, but because the test was too strict, they were yet to be claimed by anyone. Jian Wushuang had already found the locations of the 4 sword steles through Sanctuary Alliance. Now he was looking for them one by one. However, there were too many cultivators that were eyeing the 4 sword steles. There were more than 100 almighties in Juju Sword Mansion who were eyeing the sword steles. There were many among them who were faster than Jian Wushuang. Among the 4 sword steles, there were 3 that had already been claimed by the others when Jian Wushuang rushed over. Only to get the last one did Jian Wushuang manage to get there in time. There was a green sword stele that was towering there. Among the 9 sword steles, it was the last sword stele with no owner. Before the sword stele there were many experts. They came for the sword stele but they couldn't pass the test. Hence, the experts could only watch even though they knew the sword stele was valuable. Swoosh. Jian Wushuang's body suddenly appeared before the sword stele. The surrounding people immediately looked at Jian Wushuang. It is Sword Emperor. He is finally here. The test in this sword stele none of us could pass. Even Master Wu, who was powerful, tried it and failed. In Juju Sword Mansion now, the only one who could possibly pass the test should be Sword Emperor. If nothing unexpected happens, Sword Emperor definitely can pass this test. The experts at the scene were extremely confident in Jian Wushuang. They went to try the test in the sword stele and they knew the test content of the sword stele. Because they knew about the test content, they were certain that only Jian Wushuang can pass the test out of all the cultivators in Juju Sword Mansion. Jian Wushuang didn't delay any further and stepped foot into the sword stele before everyone. He appeared in an empty land again and Jian Wushuang was facing a sword spirit again. However, the sword spirit seemed to be different from the sword spirit in the other sword stele. Previously, the sword spirit was purely testing the sword principle and it would perform a different level of sword principle according to the cultivator's realm. The sword spirit in this sword stele would still perform according to the cultivator's realm, but the cultivator was supposed to take up a skip stage challenge. For instance, Jian Wushuang was a Sir God, but the fighting power that the sword spirit displayed was the level of an Emperor God. Skip stage challenge. In other words, a Sir God had to defeat an Emperor God in order to pass the test. An Emperor God had to defeat a Great Emperor directly. Great Emperor was a Great Emperor, so who knew how powerful the sword spirit that he fought against would be? However, the skip stage challenge might be nothing in ancient times, but in the Second Era, it was difficult for one at the almighty level to take up the skip stage challenge. It was almost impossible. For instance, Underworld God, who was widely acknowledged as the number Emperor God, could barely fight with an ordinary Great Emperor. In such a situation, There was naturally no one among the almighties in Jianghu Sword Mansion who could pass the test. However, the test that they couldn't pass was too easy for Jian Wushuang. Skip stage challenge? For me to defeat an emperor god? Jian Wushuang chuckled. The sword spirit only recognized realms but didn't know the scariness of Jian Wushuang as an inverse cultivator. Hence, the sword spirit only revealed the fighting power of an ordinary emperor god. Jian Wushuang could easily kill an ordinary emperor god before the breakthrough, let alone now. In an instant, the sword spirit was defeated by Jian Wushuang and the last sword steel fell into Jian Wushuang's hand as he wanted. Then Jian Wushuang had 2 sword steels in his hands. 2 sword steels. I hope there will be a complete sword principle. Jian Wushuang was looking forward to it. He started inspecting the new sword steel carefully. After reading through, Jian Wushuang was disappointed. Or it should be said that he was too unlucky. Then, the sword steels that he had gotten then were vastly different from the sword steel that he obtained earlier. Previously, the sword steel had contained 136 sword principles. But now the new one only contained 108. Most importantly, among the 108 sword principles, only 12 were associated with the 136 sword principles. To make it worse, the associated 12 sword principles were still incomplete. In other words, the 12 sword principles still required another sword steel. He just left behind some sword principles. Does Jianghu have to make it this troublesome? Jian Wushuang was distressed. A total of 9 sword steels, he got 2 steels alone, which are considered the best. However, even though he got 2 at the same time, he still couldn't cultivate any one of the sword principles or even one move. Jianghu scattered the ancient sword principles so complicatedly onto the 9 sword steels. If I were to be unlucky, even if I got 4 or 5 sword steels, I still might not be able to get a complete ancient sword principle. Let alone in the current situation where I just got myself 2 sword steels. Jian Wushuang squinted his eyes. He was sure that even if he relied on his power to grab the sword steels from the others, he might be able to get a sword principle that he was happy with. Even so, there was only one route in front of him. Among the 12 sword principles that are more complete, I shall pick 1 or 2 that are most suitable for myself. Then I shall ask the experts who got a sword steel one by one. After that, we will negotiate an exchange and I can get the sword steel from them, Jian Wushuang thought to himself. In the beginning he was thinking of getting a large number of ancient sword principles from the 9 sword steels. At least 10 to 20 of them, but then he couldn't even dream of getting 10 ancient sword principles. He would be satisfied if he could get 1 or 2 complete ancient sword principles. Jian Wushuang immediately started to choose among the 12 sword principles that were closer to completion. Every one of the 12 sword principles was powerful and meticulous. Even though the 12 sword principles were incomplete, Jian Wushuang still knows some simple information. 9th heaven stroke, 9 sword move, 1 move to the 1st heaven. Jian Wushuang looked through the information about the 12 sword principles and tried very hard to pick the one that suited him the most. Chapter 1997 Sword Principle Shen Luo. Any one of the 12 sword principles would be a first-rate sword principle in ancient times. It would be even more impressive in the current era. Jian Wushuang looked through it carefully and chose 3 sword principles in the end. The 3 sword principles were more suitable for him. Among the 3 sword principles, Jian Wushuang was looking forward to getting sword principle Shen Luo the most. Sword principle Shen Luo was created by a sword expert in ancient times named Shen Luo and he named the sword principle after himself. There was a total of 4 moves in the sword principle, but it wasn't the kind of unique skill whereby the second move would be stronger than the first. It contained 4 sword moves that covered different regions and different natures. There was 1 move in the sword principle that focused on power, 1 focused on speed, 1 focused on defense, and 1 focused on the instant explosion of power and penetrating power. 4 of the moves were using a sword as a basis and comprehension of doctrine as auxiliary. On top of that, regardless of the doctrine that one comprehended, he could still give full play to the 4 moves in the sword principle. Any move from the 4 moves in sword principle would be nothing but the combination of 4 moves could be a perfectly flawless sword principle if played during a fierce fight. Even the sword geek Jianghu left a message on the sword steel to express his admiration of that particular sword principle. Back then, when Jianghu fought with the ancient expert, Shen Luo, who had created the sword principle, he couldn't find any flaw in his opponent's sword principle. Hence, he couldn't seize any opportunity. In the end, he had relied on his pure divine power to win against his opponent unconvincingly. Among the ancient sword principles contained in the sword steels, sword principle Shen Luo could be considered a high-grade one. Sword principle doesn't need to be brilliant and luxurious, nor does it need so many moves. As long as it is practical, it will do, Jian Wushuang said. In terms of a master stroke, I already have an Emperor Sword Principle. It required time to accumulate power. It purely focused on the power of Sword Principle that was extremely fierce. During an actual fight, there will be hardly any chance for you to accumulate power, especially if it is a close combat fight. As for Sword Principle Shen Luo, it includes both attack and defense in one. It is almost flawless. As I could perform it in an instant during close combat, it absolutely could make up the deficiency in my swordsmanship. Jian Wushuang preferred Sword Principle Shen Luo over the other two Sword Principles. Of course, he had only gotten 2 sword steels and Sword Principle Shen Luo was still incomplete. These 2 sword steels contain more than half of Sword Principle Shen Luo. The rest of it should be in another 1 sword steel, Jian Wushuang muttered. But first he had to find out whose hand the final sword steel that contained the rest of Sword Principle Shen Luo was in. Jian Wushuang immediately sent out messages to check. With Jian Wushuang's current power and position, it was too easy for him to find out things, especially things about the sword steels. In no time Jian Wushuang found his answer. A few days later, on a spacious land on the ancient battlefield, Jian Wushuang stood there in silence. In a short while, a poised lady in a purple robe plunged over from afar and stopped before Jian Wushuang. Han Yi greets Sword Emperor. The poised lady in a purple robe bowed politely to Jian Wushuang to show respect. Emperor God Han Yi, there is no need to be so courteous. Jian Wushuang smiled. You should know why I looked for you, right? Sword Emperor is interested in the sword steel in my hand? Emperor God Han Yi lifted his head. Yes, Jian Wushuang nodded. To be exact, I am referring to only Sword Principle in your sword steel, Sword Principle Shen Luo. In the sword steel that I have, there is Sword Principle Shen Luo. However, Emperor God Han Yi hesitated. I want your sword steel and I naturally wouldn't just take it for free. What are your conditions? What resources and treasures do you want? Tell me, Jian Wushuang asked. He had once killed 100 Almighties from Almighty's alliance. On top of that, he had massacred over the years. The number of resources and treasure he had was terrifyingly abundant. Emperor God Han Yi was only an ordinary emperor god. Even if she brought up an exceedingly great request, Jian Wushuang would be able to fulfill it. Let alone the fact that Emperor God Han Yi shouldn't have the guts to be unreasonable. Emperor God Han Yi's expressions changed multiple times and there was a flash of hesitation before she said solemnly, Sword Emperor, I don't need any resources or treasure. I only need a favor from you. A favor? Jian Wushuang was taken by surprise. Try me. Jian Wushuang wasn't in a hurry. He had his limits. If the favor that Emperor God Han Yi asked for was just a simple matter, he naturally wouldn't refuse her. However, if the favor were to be troublesome or complicated and required some effort to carry out, or even had risk, Jian Wushuang would definitely not agree with it. Although Sword Principle Shen Luo was impressive and Jian Wushuang was looking forward to getting it, it was merely a fraction of the Sword Principle. It wasn't worth Jian Wushuang putting in too much effort to get it. Emperor God Han Yi took a deep breath and lowered her voice. Sword Emperor, do you know that I have an enemy? Enemy? You mean Yan Zun? Jian Wushuang squinted his eyes. After he found out that the sword steel that contained the last bit of Sword Principle Shen Luo was in Emperor God Han Yi's hand, Jian Wushuang did a background check on Emperor God Han Yi. Emperor God Han Yi did have an enemy and it was the kind that shared profound hatred. The enemy of hers was Yan Zun. Yan Zun, who was last among all great emperors on Heaven and Earth Supreme Ranking list. Emperor God Han Yi, you are not thinking to ask me to kill Yan Zun on your behalf, right? Jian Wushuang's gaze became cold. Although Yan Zun was in last place among all great emperors, he was still a great emperor. How powerful must one be to be able to kill a great emperor? On Heaven and Earth Supreme Ranking list, besides Emperor Bai, no one else could do that. Even Red Dragon King on the second place, right below Emperor Bai, even if he launched a full force attack and paid a price, it would still not be definite that he could kill Yan Zun. Unless there were 2 to 3 great emperors joining forces, then there would be a chance. If Jian Wushuang were to join forces with Jian Yi and play some trump cards, they might be able to kill Yan Zun. However, for a fraction of Sword Principle, he had to kill a great emperor? That was impossible. Sword Emperor, you misunderstood me. It is only a sword steel. How can I ask Sword Emperor to kill Yan Zun for me? I only wanted Sword Emperor to teach Yan Zun a lesson. You don't have to kill him but let him be in a fix and embarrass him. That will do, Emperor God Han Yi said. Just to embarrass him? Jian Wushuang was surprised. It would be simple if he was only required to embarrass him. It seems that your hatred of Yan Zun is unusual. With any slight chance, you'd want to use it against him. Jian Wushuang looked at Emperor God Han Yi curiously. Emperor God Han Yi's eyes were immediately filled with boundless hatred and murderous intention. Chapter 1998 Challenge Yan Zun. The B***starred Yan Zun killed my husband and my daughter. I am dying to drink his blood and eat his flesh. Emperor God Han Yi sounded extremely cold and brutal. The hatred between her and Yan Zun was too profound. It was a pity that she wasn't powerful enough and she couldn't take revenge. However, with any chance that she got, she would try to fight Yan Zun. Even if it meant only embarrassing Yan Zun, it was enough for her to pay a great price to get it done. That was hatred. I can promise you that I will find Yan Zun and vent your anger on your behalf, Jian Wushuang said. Thank you, Sword Emperor. Emperor God Han Yi was surprised. Wait for me here, Jian Wushuang said. Then he turned and left to find Yan Zun. There were many regions on the boundless ancient battlefield that had yet to be discovered. In the void above the ancient battlefield, where the space gap was at Virum, there were lofty palaces and pavilions towering in the sky that formed rolling buildings. The buildings were built by Sanctuary Alliance on the ancient battlefield. There were countless experts from Sanctuary Alliance that wandered on the ancient battlefield. They needed a place to rest too. Hence, Sanctuary Alliance built a bunch of buildings there. There were many experts in Sanctuary Alliance who would return to the buildings when they were tired from exploring the ancient battlefields. At that very moment, Jian Wushuang arrived before the buildings. Yan Zun. Jian Wushuang's loud and bright voice reverberated across the sky. There were many experts from Sanctuary Alliance in the buildings who heard the voice. Of course, that included Yan Zun. Swoosh, swoosh. There were two figures that plunged out from the buildings in the first instant. Besides Yan Zun, there was another tall and sturdy middle-aged man in golden armor. Oh, great Emperor Tianyu is here too? Jian Wushuang glanced at the tall and sturdy middle-aged man in golden armor. In Eternal Chaotic World, there were 13 great emperors from Sanctuary Alliance. Among the 13 great emperors, there were 10 of them who were masters of a sanctuary. Great Emperor Tianyu was the master of Sky Mountain Sanctuary. His power should be below average standard among all great emperors. Oh, it's Sword Emperor. Both Yan Zun and Great Emperor Tianyu looked surprised when they saw Jian Wushuang. Both of them also noticed Jian Wushuang's Sir God aura and they knew that Jian Wushuang had broken through. I wonder why Sword Emperor is looking me for? Yan Zun smiled and asked Jian Wushuang. Jian Wushuang and he did not share any resentment. Even before Jian Wushuang grew strong, he had never revealed any murderous intention to Jian Wushuang. Hence, he wasn't worried that Jian Wushuang would do anything to him. Jian Wushuang smiled and replied, Yan Zun, as you can see, I just broke through and I have yet to determine my power accurately. Hence, I came to look for Yan Zun to challenge you. Challenge? Yan Zun was shocked. In Eternal Chaotic World, it was normal that cultivators would challenge one another. However, when one's power reached the Great Emperor level, they cared about their position and status. Hence, they wouldn't fight easily. They wouldn't take the initiative to challenge one another if there wasn't a reason behind it as well. However, Jian Wushuang, although Yan Zun was confused, he replied with a smile, if so, let's find an independent space to fight a hardy battle then. Independent space? There's no need to. The ancient battlefield is so huge. We can just fight nearby, Jian Wushuang smiled. Such a joke. He came to find trouble intentionally so that Yan Zun would be embarrassed. If they were to fight in an independent space, there would only be the two of them but no other spectator. Even if Yan Zun were defeated, it wouldn't affect his reputation. Here? Yan Zun creased his eyebrows and he found it weird. Yan Zun, get ready. I am going to fight now. Jian Wushuang flashed a malicious smile and he moved. Swoosh. Jian Wushuang was like a ghost. He disappeared and reappeared before Yan Zun. He already withdrew Blood Mountain Sword on his back. Reincarnation Sword Principle, Buzz. The sword light slashed and it was as though it contained a full reincarnation cycle. Jian Wushuang exploded his divine power and ancient tribe bloodline power to his extreme limit. The stroke was enough to split heaven and earth. What is Jian Wushuang trying to do? He challenged me out of nowhere and he didn't want to go into independent space either. Regardless of what his intention is, as he wants to fight, I will fight a battle with him. He is alone after all. Even if he has already broken through, he is at most one with the fighting power of a great emperor. I can easily deal with him. I will dismiss him after a short fight. Yan Zun was still trying to figure out Jian Wushuang's intention and was in deep thought. When Jian Wushuang appeared before him and slashed, only then he came back to reality. This stroke, Yan Zun's face changed. He flipped his hand and there was a red battle axe. The battle axe contained a fiery flame and he suddenly slammed it down. Oh. That stroke seemed to have the power to burn every living thing in the universe. Although Yan Zun was at the bottom among all great emperors, he was still extraordinarily strong. However, just as the red battle axe collided with Jian Wushuang's blood mountain sword, buzz! Yan Zun's divine body shook and his aura churned. Then, the muscles all over his body flew out like he was lobbing a shell. Just as the muscles were shot out, his body continued to boil. His body finally stopped after a while. After he steadied himself, Yan Zun couldn't help but look at his hands. His right hand was numb and it was aching. How is this possible? Yan Zun was astonished. He thought Jian Wushuang would at most have the fighting power of an ordinary great emperor after a breakthrough. Although he was at the bottom of all great emperors, it shouldn't be a problem to deal with Jian Wushuang. But in the end, he was knocked senseless by the stroke that contained terrifying power. The power contained in the stroke was too powerful. From that stroke itself, he could tell that Jian Wushuang was absolutely not weaker than him but even stronger than him. At least, in terms of power and strength, he was far behind Jian Wushuang. Ha Yan Zun, you and I shall fight a hearty battle today. Jian Wushuang laughed and raged. His body increased in size and there were extra heads and arms popping out of his body. A total of 9 heads and 18 arms. 9 heads and 18 arms, Jian Wushuang had already mastered the secret skill entirely. At the same time, Jian Wushuang took out a token. The token was a mirror token specially to record this battle. Come on. Jian Wushuang came before Yan Zun again. He waved his 18 arms and fought at close quarters with Yan Zun. Chapter 1999 Trampled. Wow, 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 wow. There were continuous sword lights that whistled out from Jian Wushuang's 18 arms. Simultaneously, there were 5 Hongjun golden swords that attacked at terrifyingly fast speed. Besides some trump cards, Jian Wushuang gave full play to his fighting power. One should know that Jian Wushuang was master Wus match when he fought force with force back then. He had yet to perform 9 head 18 arms then as well. In other words, the fighting power that he revealed was much stronger than when he had fought with Master Wu. It was hard to call a victory or defeat when Master Wu, who was in the 8th place on Heaven and Earth's supreme ranking list, fought with Jian Wushuang, who revealed such power. Let alone Yan Zun, who was at the bottom of all great emperors. Of course, it was unstoppable. Hence, there was no suspense in the battle. Yan Zun was suppressed entirely since the very beginning. In merely a short while, the situation had become a one-sided trampling. Yes, he was ruthlessly trampled on. Jian Wushuang put his full fighting power to play and ruthlessly trampled on Yan Zun. Although Yan Zun was angry and aggrieved, he couldn't find any opportunity to counterattack under Jian Wushuang's Hongjun golden sword in close combat. The vast difference in terms of strength and power suppressed him completely and he was devastated. Many people saw that battle. The place where they fought was near to the buildings. There were many experts from Sanctuary Alliance who flew above the buildings to watch in the void. Swoosh. A chubby, bald young man stood at the border of the battlefield. These two. Sword Emperor and the other one is Yan Zun? What's going on? Why are the two of them together? The bald young man looked shocked. It seems that Sword Emperor came to visit and said that he wants to challenge Yan Zun. Then this happened, the Sir God next to him explained. Sword Emperor challenged Yan Zun? I have never heard of Yan Zun offending Sword Emperor though. Why did Sword Emperor come to challenge him? How is this a challenge? He is obviously trampling on him. The bald young man exclaimed. Who knows? Anyway, Yan Zun is doomed, the Sir God sighed. The surrounding experts from Sanctuary Alliance were then complimenting and sighing. They first complimented Jian Wushuang's power. They never expected that Jian Wushuang's fighting power would be that strong after the breakthrough. He could suppress Yan Zun with thunderous measures. On the other side they pitted Yan Zun. Yan Zun looked too pathetic then. Jian Wushuang suppressed him and ruthlessly trampled on him. Even though he was angry, he couldn't do anything about it. At the same time, they were trying to guess what had happened between Yan Zun and Jian Wushuang as well. From their viewpoints, the two of them definitely shared deep enmity and thought it must be that Yan Zun had offended Jian Wushuang somehow or other. Otherwise, Jian Wushuang absolutely wouldn't ruthlessly trample on Yan Zun in front of so many people. It was legit give him tight slaps in public. Sword Emperor, I lost this battle. Hurry up and stop. Yan Zun had admitted defeat long ago. However, Jian Wushuang pretended to not hear. He never stopped his actions but continued to trample on him mercilessly. Yan Zun was furious. At the border of the battlefield, Great Emperor Tianyu was astonished too. He was astonished because of the power that Jian Wushuang displayed. Although Yan Zun is at the bottom in all great emperors, there is no doubt about his power. However, in front of Sword Emperor, he couldn't even counter-attack but is suppressed entirely and trampled on mercilessly. Jian Wushuang's power. Great Emperor Tianyu squinted his eyes and understood the power of Jian Wushuang. There's no doubt that Jian Wushuang had the fighting power of a great emperor. Among all great emperors, he wasn't at the bottom but at an average level or even above average. But he had just broken through? The battle between Jian Wushuang and Yan Zun lasted for 15 minutes. In other words, Yan Zun had been trampled on for 15 minutes. Jian Wushuang finally stopped. Swoosh. Yan Zun instantly became a flowing light and burst out. Then he kept his distance from Jian Wushuang. When he looked at Yan Zun had already lost his composure. His hair was messy and the armor he wore had faint white dots that were left behind by Jian Wushuang. On top of that, he looked extremely pale and there was blood at the corner of his lips. He looked like he was in a fix. B*****. Yan Zun clenched his fists. His eyes were looking at Jian Wushuang and burning with fire. A great emperor expert was already the top superb existence in eternal chaotic world. When one's power reached such a level, they would care most about their reputation. Then he was ruthlessly trampled on before everyone by Jian Wushuang and he was trampled on for so long. His reputation was all gone. Then there were suspicious gazes around him. There were even people smiling smugly at his failure. He was dying to find a place to hide. He naturally clenched his teeth with hatred of Jian Wushuang, who had caused all of this to happen. Yan Zun, goodbye. Jian Wushuang let out a burst of hearty laughter and then left. The surrounding experts were confused at the sight. From the beginning until the end, Sword Emperor didn't reveal the reason why he had challenged Yan Zun and trampled him so badly. As for the reason he mentioned about verifying his power after his breakthrough, no one believed that. As Jian Wushuang left, no one continued to ask but immediately spread the news. Jian Wushuang had already broken through. He had become an almighty from a real god. After he broke through, he found Yan Zun, who was at the bottom among all great emperors, and challenged him. Then he had ruthlessly trampled on Yan Zun with thunderous measures. The moment the news spread, all experts in eternal chaotic world received the news in an instant. Very soon there was more news. It was about the fight between Jian Wushuang and Master Wu in Jiuzhu Sword Mansion. Jian Wushuang and Master Wu had fought face to face. In the end they were evenly matched. The news once again proved Jian Wushuang's power. In eternal chaotic world there were many experts who were astonished. They knew that Jian Wushuang would definitely improve greatly in power once he had a breakthrough and become an almighty, but they had never expected him to improve so tremendously. He had just broken through and he could be evenly matched with Master Wu and could trample on Yan Zun. The others had already recognized his power. Jian Wushuang could be in the top 10 on Heaven and Earth Supreme ranking list. Chapter 2000 Demon King came into the world. In a lofty palace. There was a total of 3 almighties knelt down on the ground in fear. Find out for me. I'd like to know who is the one who is so capable that they could ask Sword Emperor to deal with me on their behalf. You must find out for me. I want to chop him into pieces. Yan Zun then was like a raging beast. His face was red and he was raging in anger. The 3 persons who knelt before him were experts under his command. Yan Zun was certain that he had never offended Jian Wushuang. Even during the time when they were resolving the matter of Greenfire World, he was merely speaking on behalf of Sanctuary Alliance. It couldn't be considered offending Jian Wushuang. He never came into contact with Lineage of Star either. Hence, he was certain that Jian Wushuang didn't come to look for him because of personal resentment. The biggest possibility was that other experts got Jian Wushuang to deal with him using an unknown method. He reckoned that the person only wanted Sword Emperor to trample on him to lose their reputation. Then he was embarrassed. Although it was Jian Wushuang who did it, he could only take it in about it. Because, regardless of Jian Wushuang's power or influence, they were far beyond him. He had great potential too. Hence, Jian Wushuang was not someone he could offend. Hence, he could only vent all his anger on the expert who made Jian Wushuang did that. Yan Zun used all his connections and started investigating. On the other side, Jian Wushuang appeared before Emperor God Han Yi again. Take a look at this mirror token. Jian Wushuang passed Emperor God Han Yi the mirror token. Emperor God Han Yi took it over and looked through it carefully. Then her eyes were shimmering with joy. After she watched the images in the mirror token, Emperor God Han Yi took a deep breath and bowed politely to Jian Wushuang. Thank you, Sword Emperor. I trampled Yan Zun on your behalf merely because of the sword steel. There is nothing to thank me for, Jian Wushuang said coldly. Emperor God Han Yi nodded and immediately handed the sword steel to Jian Wushuang. Emperor God Han Yi had already refined the sword steel before, which was why Jian Wushuang could refine it again with ease. After refining it, Jian Wushuang started inspecting the sword steel. As expected, there was the last fraction of sword principle Shen Luo in it. With the combination of 3 sword steels, sword principle Shen Luo was then completed. Jian Wushuang was filled with excitement. Emperor God Han Yi, Jian Wushuang looked. Yan Zun could become a great emperor and he isn't stupid. I share no resentment with him, but I found trouble with him today on purpose and trampled on him. He should be able to guess that there was someone who paid a price for me to do so. Hence, if nothing unexpected happens, he will stop at nothing to find out who the person is. And he would find out that it is you very soon. Thank you, Sword Emperor, for your reminder. Emperor God Han Yi nodded. She had made the same speculations and she had already decided to immediately leave the ancient battlefield. As long as she left the ancient battlefield, even if Yan Zun found out that it was her who had made Jian Wushuang do it, it wouldn't be easy for Yan Zun to find her in the boundless eternal chaotic world. Emperor God Han Yi left while Jian Wushuang returned to Green Fire World. As for if Yan Zun could find Emperor God Han Yi and if Emperor God Han Yi could survive, Jian Wushuang didn't care. He merely made a deal with Emperor God Han Yi. Then the deal had ended. So, everything that followed had nothing to do with him. In Wushuang City in the secret room, there were 3 green steels towering there in silence. Jian Wushuang sat before the 3 green steels as he carefully comprehended sword principle Shen Luo in the 3 sword steels. Jian Wushuang organized sword principle Shen Luo from the 3 sword steels. Very soon, a complete and powerful sword principle took form in Jian Wushuang's head clearly. Let's begin. Jian Wushuang closed his eyes and started comprehending the ancient sword principle Shen Luo with full attention. Time flew past and Jian Wushuang was absorbed in his cultivation. He went out once in between. He left Green Fire World and the battlefield to go to Lineage of Star. He refined Universe Galaxy in Lineage of Star and moved it to Green Fire World. From then on, Lineage of Star's old lair was set up within Green Fire World. Then Jian Wushuang continued to cultivate in seclusion. In the blink of an eye, 1,800 years had passed as he cultivated in seclusion. In the 1,800 years, both the surrounding ancient battlefield and Green Fire World were peaceful. The growing speed of Green Fire World was terrifyingly fast. There were more and more geniuses that came into the world, and they started to come to prominence in Eternal Chaotic World. However, such tranquility was merely on the surface. In the darkness, the waves of chaos were surging. In the darkest place in Eternal Chaotic World, gurgle, there was dark river water that covered the entire universe. The river was just like Acheron. The black river water was like water in Acheron. There was where the old lair of Acheron Palace was located. Right in the middle of the boundless Acheron water, there was a pitch-black pavilion that towered over the floating island. In the pavilion it was dark. In the darkness there were figures kneeling in reverence. In one glance there should be more than dozens of them. All of them were in black robes and the aura that they gave out was powerful. They were all almighties above Sir God level. In front of the figures in black there was a huge bronze sculpture. The bronze sculpture was about 1,000 zhang tall. It had a monster mask on and it had 8 hands. Each of the hands were holding different weapons. At that very moment, the bronze sculpture was quivering vigorously. The 1,000 zhang tall body quivered and it shook the mountains and earth. The huge pavilion trembled in the balance too. The figures in black who knelt before the figure lowered their heads further when they noticed the sight. All of them were so nervous that they were holding their breaths. Along with the quiver, the bronze sculpture slowly diminished in size. In a short while, the tall bronze sculpture became a 2-meter-tall brawny man who was in bronze-colored skin. The brawny man was muscular. He had a beard and his hair was messy. His body had a faint foul smell just like he was a living savage. The moment the savage man appeared, the figures in black who were kneeling down shivered in fear. At the very next moment, everyone got up and cheered. "Welcome Demon King, demon power is here. Welcome Demon King, demon power is here." Their chants continuously reverberated in the dark pavilion. Chapter 2001 White Hair Gray Eyes. How many years? How many years has it been? I finally recovered my power entirely. Ha ha ha. The 2-meter-tall savage man laughed hysterically. His voice reverberated in the pavilion and into the figure in black's ears. After quite some time he stopped laughing. Then, the savage man's beast-like cold gaze cast onto the person in front of him. This person was different from the figures in black because he was in a white robe. How's the preparation going? The savage man asked. Everything is ready. We are only waiting for Demon King to return, the man in the white robe replied politely. Very good, the savage man smiled and continued to ask, how about the other two places? How is their preparation going? Not sure. They should be ready too, the man in the white robe replied. Humph. So what are you waiting for? Send them a message right now. Tell them I want to see them, the savage man commanded. Yes, the man in the white robe nodded and quickly went to make arrangements. After a few days in the boundless dark void. The boundless dark void seemed to be out of tune with eternal chaotic world. However, it was not related to ancient times nor the first era. At the end of the dark void, there was a lofty throne towering. It was the savage man seated on the throne while the man in the white robe standing next to him. However, in the void there were another two thrones besides the one the savage man was seated on. Virum? There was a strange power that started to concentrate. Then, on the throne right opposite the savage man, there was a lady dressed in white that had white gauze over her face. Although the lady dressed in white had her face covered, her body and her temperament were still as enchanting. If she were to remove her gauze, the lady dressed in white might even stir a carnage of war with a word or a smile. Lung Wushua greets Mr. Demon King. The lady dressed in white appeared before the savage man and she bowed politely to show respect. Looking at the incomer, the savage man creased his eyebrows and bellowed, What happened? Where did old Manfin go? Why did he send a little girl who is still wet behind the ears over? Lord Fun is at an important stage. He can't be distracted so I came instead, the lady dressed in white, Lung Wushua replied coldly. Humph, you're just a little girl. You can represent old Manfin? You can represent Holocaust sect? The savage man smirked in disdain. Mr. Demon King, the man in the white robe next to the savage man said softly, although Lung Wushua wasn't old, her skills are impressive. After Lord Fun went into seclusion, Holocaust sect broke apart like scattered sand. However, not too long ago Holocaust sect was united by someone using thunderous measures. The person who united Holocaust sect is Lung Wushua. She is not the master of Holocaust sect. The savage man exclaimed but sneered, just little girl and she can unite Holocaust sect? Is it because old Manfin gave his full support? The old Manfin has bad vision. He found a little girl to be his successor? Could it be that old Manfin lived for too long and he has lustful desire churning in him? He was then charmed by this little girl? Although the savage man was joking, he obviously sounded scornful. Just then, the lady dressed in white who was opposite him, Lung Wushua, suddenly lifted her head. As she lifted her head, there was a special mark that appeared in between her eyebrows. Her eyes turned white without any hint of blood. She had long black hair but it instantly turned white as well. Her white hair was swaying along with the breeze. There was an unprecedented extermination aura that spread. The extermination aura was entirely different from the power of extermination performed by extermination doctrine. The extermination aura didn't derive from the power of Heaven Wei but from Lung Wushua herself. White hair, gray eyes, the body of divine providence. Everywhere she passes, there will be no sign of life. The savage man creased his eyebrows and his face grew solemn. He looked at Lung Wushua again and there wasn't any contempt in his eyes anymore. No wonder old Manfin picked you. It turned out that you are the person's successor? The savage man said in a deep voice. When he brought up the person, there was a flash of strange expression in his eyes with a tinge of fear. It was obvious that the person that he was referring to was very terrifying to him. I respect Mr. Demon King, but I hope that when Mr. Demon King speaks, you'll take note of your identity. Otherwise. Lung Wushua, who had white hair and gray eyes, had a flash of unique light in her gray eyes. The light was blurry yet contained boundless demonic power. Amazing, she is already awakened until that state? The savage man was terrified and his stone calmed down significantly. It is merely a misunderstanding. Little girl, no, I mean Lord Lung, don't misunderstand. Humph. Lung Wushua let out a cold humph and the special mark in between her eyebrows slowly disappeared. Her white hair and gray eyes gradually resumed to its original color. The extermination aura soaring from her body earlier gradually dispersed too. Mr. Demon King, shall we get down to business then? Lung Wushua said coldly. Of course, the savage man smiled. There was no scornful look when he looked at Lung Wushua, but there was no fear in his eyes either. After all, they weren't in ancient times. If in ancient times he absolutely would be fearful when he saw Lung Wushua. But then, any one of them were restricted. He wasn't even afraid of Emperor 13, who was once in the top 5 during the ancient war back then. He naturally wouldn't be fearful of Leng Wuxia as well. Just then, there was a figure that slowly substantiated on the last throne. The figure was covered in blood. It looked just like a bloody statue with an unclear appearance. It was obvious that it was just an incarnation. "We are waiting for you," the savage man smiled. Leng Wuxia looked at the bloody statue too. "Let's be straightforward. We are ready and it is your call." The bloody statue revealed an empty bloody eye socket as he glanced at the savage man and Leng Wuxia. "I have no issues," the savage man replied. "Holocaust sect is ready. The only thing is that Lord Fin needs a little longer until he can wake up again," Leng Wuxia said. "As long as you are here, it doesn't matter if old man Fin is here," the savage man said. Leng Wuxia looked cold and she didn't reply to that comment. "As we are all ready, let's take action according to the agreed plan." "All right," the savage man nodded heavily. They had been waiting for this day for a very, very long time. Chapter 2002I? The eternal chaotic world was boundless. Besides the core 10 cultivation sanctuaries, there were boundless holy kingdoms that were human territory. There were countless holy kingdoms and they make up 99% of human territories. Among the countless holy kingdoms, one of them was the Holy Kingdom of Celestial Fire. Holy Kingdom of Celestial Fire was located at the border of eternal chaotic world and it was further away from the 10 cultivation sanctuaries. The quality and standard of the cultivators were naturally not as high as those in the 10 cultivation sanctuaries. However, as the monarch of Holy Kingdom of Celestial Fire was powerful, he was at the top among chaotic real gods. There was no drastic change in the Holy Kingdom of Celestial Fire over the years when he ruled Holy Kingdom of Celestial Fire. However, that day, Virum, the entire territory that was conquered by the Holy Kingdom of Celestial Fire suddenly shook vigorously. There was no symptom before the vigorous shake. It happened all of a sudden and it became more and more vigorous, to the point where the spacetime became chaotic. The cultivators in the Holy Kingdom of Celestial Fire, including the higher-up real gods and the monarch of Holy Kingdom of Celestial Fire, who was a peak chaotic real god, were astonished. What's going on? In the Imperial City, the monarch of the Holy Kingdom of Celestial Fire looked cold as he looked down upon the large numbers of cultivators kneeling before him. The people kneeling before him were just as confused. "Quick, find out the source of this violent shaking," the monarch of Holy Kingdom of Celestial Fire immediately commanded. Very soon, the monarch of the Holy Kingdom of Celestial Fire found out that the source of the violent shaking was from the boundless dark void. In the territory of the Holy Kingdom of Celestial Fire, in the middle of the boundless dark void, there was a huge crack. The crack seemed to be a slash by someone with thunderous measures that had caused a crack from the middle of the entire Holy Kingdom of Celestial Fire. Too long. The crack was too long and it was across the vast territory of the Holy Kingdom of Celestial Fire. After the crack appeared, it was expanding at a terrifyingly fast speed. It was originally a small crack but it slowly became a gully between heaven and earth. In the gully between heaven and earth, there was a dim light that was growing brighter. What's going on? The monarch and the cultivators in the Holy Kingdom of Celestial Fire were terrified. They didn't understand what had happened and they couldn't do anything about it. They could only watch as the gully grew bigger as the dim light grew brighter. Finally, the dim light reached the border of the gully and it obviously extended to the other end of the gully as well. In the Holy Kingdom of Celestial Fire, there was a huge object that descended. It was black but glowing. It was extremely mysterious. It was huge. It extended from the gully and replaced the Holy Kingdom of Celestial Fire's boundless territory. It was fierce. The moment it appeared, it pressed at Holy Kingdom of Celestial Fire like it was breaking a piece of deadwood. The territory of the Holy Kingdom of Celestial Fire, including countless cultivators, had almost no space for struggle but instantly vanished into thin air. Even the monarch of Holy Kingdom of Celestial Fire died an instant death under its pressure. In the blink of an eye, at the very moment it descended, the Holy Kingdom of Celestial Fire that was originally in the territory vanished into thin air. There wasn't any trace left behind. After the Holy Kingdom of Celestial Fire disappeared entirely, it descended on the territory. It was huge in size. Its size was equal to the size of a holy kingdom. It was round and its shape looked exactly like a black steel ball. It gave out an ancient yet mysterious aura. After it landed, it started spinning gradually. As it spun, the mysterious black steel ball slowly moved to the surrounding territory. Its travel speed wasn't fast but its power was terrifying. Everywhere it passed would be destroyed. The huge, black steel ball that was the size of a vast holy kingdom started moving to the other surrounding holy kingdoms after it landed on the holy kingdom of celestial fire. At the surrounding of the holy kingdom of celestial fire, it was right next to another huge holy kingdom. The distance between the two holy kingdoms wasn't far. The black steel ball only vanished the holy kingdom of celestial fire for less than half a month, and it arrived at the border of the other holy kingdom. When it arrived, its speed didn't diminish but continued to jostle and elbow its way as though it was breaking a piece of deadwood. The worlds and the territories were rolled over by the black steel ball mercilessly. It was just like a huge millstone. It grinds wherever it goes. After it ran through the holy kingdom, the territories of the holy kingdom were destroyed. After the holy kingdom of celestial fire, the other holy kingdom vanished into thin air as well. However, the emergence of the black steel ball and the ability to vanish everything caught the attention of the cultivators around the holy kingdom of celestial fire. As they were astonished, the cultivators took turns to launch attacks at the black steel ball. But it didn't cause any effect on it at all. There was even an almighty who got involved personally, but he didn't manage to stop it at all. The black steel ball continued to roll its way without hindrance and wipe out everything along the way. Sanctuary Alliance received the news about the existence of the black steel ball very soon. In an instant, the entire Sanctuary Alliance and the entire eternal chaotic world was astonished. Green Fire World in a secret room in Wushuang City. In the secret room that was extremely spacious, Jian Wushuang stood holding a sword. There were figures in bronze armor standing around him. The figures in bronze armor were Dao soldiers. There was a total of over 10 of them. Suddenly the Dao soldiers moved at the same time. Every one of them revealed terrifying power. In terms of power alone, the Dao soldiers absolutely reached the level of a Sir God. There were over 10 Dao soldiers who attacked at the same time while Jian Wushuang only smiled. Virum. There was a shapeless sword intention that sword in Jian Wushuang turned into a black hole. A black hole that could swallow all power. In the black hole, the sword in his hand was wielded. Wah, 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 wah. There were sword lights that extended from the black hole and collided with the Dao soldiers' fists. Along with the low thuds, the Dao soldiers retreated from the impact. One should know that Jian Wushuang merely used the limited power of a real god since the very beginning. It was far from a Sir God level power. The power exploded was much weaker than the Dao soldiers, and there were more than 10 Dao soldiers that attacked him simultaneously. However, Jian Wushuang blocked the Dao soldiers' attack easily, and he even beat them off. It was a sword principle that Jian Wushuang had performed. Sword principle Xian Luo, one of the 4 moves in the sword principle. Mixed Element Spirit. Chapter 2003 Supreme Meeting. Mixed Element Spirit wasn't a sword principle that focused on its form. It focused on the mood, or in other words, sword intention. The sword intention could be combined with the doctrine that a person comprehended perfectly. Jian Wushuang comprehended reincarnation doctrine, and his sword intention could become a reincarnation cycle. For instance, Jian Wushuang turned into a space black hole that revolved like reincarnation and swallowed everything. Although he continuously performed over a dozen strokes and they looked like they were different, in actual fact he was performing the same sword principle, mixed element spirit. It was merely because there were many patterns and forms. Among the 4 moves in sword principle Xian Luo, mixed element spirit was the most exquisite one. Because of mixed element spirit, people found the sword principle perfect and almost flawless, Jian Wushuang muttered. In ancient times, sword geek Jiuju hadn't found any flaw in the sword expert who created sword principle Xian Luo. No matter how intense his attacks were, the sword expert managed to defend. If it wasn't because there was a difference in their divine power, it would be impossible for Jiuju to defeat the sword expert. Hence, mixed element spirit could be said to be the true essence of sword principle Xian Luo. As for the other 3 moves of the sword principle, they were all exquisite and powerful too. However, in Jian Wushuang's view, they weren't as well crafted as mixed element spirits. I completely mastered the 4 moves in sword principle Xian Luo after comprehending for 1,800 years. I could also perform them perfectly. However, the power of the 4 moves in the sword principle would continue to improve as my comprehension heightened. I have to figure out a way to improve my understanding of swordsmanship, Jian Wushuang thought to himself. Just then, there was a sudden vibration from a token in Jian Wushuang's Chen Kuan ring. Huh? Emperor Bai sent me a message? Jian Wushuang's eyes dilated in shock. The vibrating token belonged to Emperor Bai. Jian Wushuang immediately started reading. Supreme Meeting of Sanctuary Alliance? Held in Thunderbolt Island? Jian Wushuang was stunned. Sanctuary Alliance was the highest alliance formed by human cultivators in order to deal with potential danger in eternal chaotic world. Previously, although Jian Wushuang had a conflict with Sanctuary Alliance because of Green Fire World, he was still a member of Sanctuary Alliance. Sanctuary Alliance was going to have a supreme meeting and he naturally qualified to participate as he was also one with fighting power of a great emperor. In Thunderbolt Island, there was an ancient, tall pavilion towering over the peak of Sanctuary Alliance. It was named Presbytery Pavilion. Presbytery Pavilion represents the highest authority of Sanctuary Alliance. Over the years, the higher-ups and experts from Sanctuary Alliance would gather at Presbytery Pavilion only when there was a major incident in eternal chaotic world. Whatever command was given via Presbytery Pavilion would be the highest command from Sanctuary Alliance. Even the command of the Supreme One in Sanctuary Alliance, Emperor Bai, wouldn't be higher than the command from Presbytery Pavilion. There was a huge round table in the middle of the void in Presbytery Pavilion. There were lofty thrones surrounding the round table. Every single throne was huge and there were many people who were seated on the thrones. For instance, Abysmal Saint Master Ancestor Tianqin, Great Emperor Zisu, Great Emperor Colored Glaze and many others had arrived. Virum. On one of the thrones, a figure slowly substantiated. It was Jian Wushuang. Green Fire World and the surrounding ancient battlefield were extremely important to Sanctuary Alliance. Hence, Sanctuary Alliance had already paid a great price to build a spacetime wormhole outside the ancient battlefield, which was Snow Kingdom. It could connect to the 10 cultivation sanctuaries in Thunderbolt Island. Hence, Jian Wushuang didn't need to spend much time to rush to Thunderbolt Island from Green Fire World. The moment Jian Wushuang appeared, there were many great emperors who looked over. Sword Emperor. Sword Emperor. Great emperors who didn't have beef with Jian Wushuang, like Great Emperor Purple Moon and Great Emperor East Royal, greeted Jian Wushuang simultaneously. Jian Wushuang responded with a smile. Sword Emperor only came alone? How about your sword servant and Lord Sound Spirit? There was a gentle voice. It was Great Emperor Zisu who asked. Great Emperor Zisu flashed a gentle smile and his eyes revealed kindness as well. Back then, although Great Emperor Zisu had once collaborated with Abysmal Saint Master and Great Emperor Colored Glaze to corner him, Great Emperor Zisu and Jian Wushuang shared no resentment, nor did they have conflict. Hence, neither party held grudges. My sword servant is in Green Fire World. As for Lord Sound Spirit, she isn't one from Sanctuary Alliance, Jian Wushuang replied with a smile. I see. Great Emperor Zisu was surprised but he didn't ask further. As for Abysmal Saint Master and Great Emperor Colored Glaze wasn't happy, but Jian Wushuang didn't bother with them either. Besides that, among the great emperors there was another person who was unhappy with Jian Wushuang. The person was, of course, Yan Zun. 1,800 years ago, Jian Wushuang had challenged him and trampled on him mercilessly before many experts, which he was embarrassed about. Although he had investigated and found out it was because of Emperor God Han Yi, who had offered a sword steel in exchange for Jian Wushuang to do that, it was a fact that Jian Wushuang had trampled on him. Almost all 13 great emperors of Sanctuary Alliance are here. Jian Wushuang looked around. Although there weren't only 13 great emperors on Heaven and Earth Supreme Ranking list, the other few didn't join Sanctuary Alliance. For instance, Master Wu wasn't in Sanctuary Alliance. Hence, he naturally wouldn't participate in the meeting. Then, if Jian Wushuang didn't include himself, there were 10 of them who were already seated around the round table. Among the 10 great emperors, there were some who came in person and some who attended with incarnation. Virum. 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 Then, 3 figures substantiated at the same time. The last 3 great emperors arrived. The last 3 great emperors were Emperor Bai, Red Dragon King and Ancestor Tianqin. In Sanctuary Alliance, the 13 great emperors including Jian Wushuang, all 14 great emperor experts were there. The supreme meeting started then. Everyone. It was a low, deep voice that belonged to Red Dragon King. Red Dragon King, in the second place on Heaven and Earth Supreme Ranking list, second to Emperor Bai, he had once received the bloodline of an ancient dragon tribe in an ancient battlefield. Hence, he looked just like an ordinary human. The only obvious difference was the pair of red dragon horns on his forehead. Sanctuary Alliance held this supreme meeting for only one matter. Everyone please watch. Red Dragon went straight to the point. He didn't even bother greeting the great emperors and took out a token straight away. The token was a mirror token. There was a huge image that appeared before all the great emperors then. All great emperors including Jian Wushuang were staring at the image. It was the black steel ball of the size of a holy kingdom plunging in the boundless void and rolling over everything. Chapter 2004 Dark Millstone? All great emperors were watching closely. They saw the huge black steel ball roll over everything like breaking pieces of deadwood. It even crushed the Holy Kingdom into pieces. The great emperor's gazes became terrified. It was really an astonishing sight. One should know how spacious a holy kingdom was and how many the cultivators were there. Even those great emperors, although they had absolute power and they could definitely destroy a holy kingdom, their destruction was limited to taking out the higher-ups only. As for killing all cultivators in the territories of the Holy Kingdom, although they would be able to do it, it would require a long time. After all, even if a great emperor were to destroy the world one by one, a holy kingdom was made up of thousands of worlds. It would take long enough to be entirely wiped out. The biggest possibility was to send the experts under their control and they would be able to make a holy kingdom disappear in a very short time. But then the black steel ball was much fiercer. It didn't have any scruples, but a holy kingdom had vanished straight away after it had rolled over. Red Dragon, what is going on? Where did this thing come from? Abysmal Saint Master creased his eyebrows and looked at him. The other great emperors looked solemn too. They could tell how terrifying and powerful the black steel ball was. Red Dragon King took a deep breath and answered seriously, "What the thing is, where the thing is from, remains unknown for now. Emperor Bai Tianqin and I named this thing earlier. We called it a dark millstone." Dark millstone? The great emperors nodded simultaneously. The black steel ball crushed everything along the way. It was really like a huge millstone. On top of that, its body was all black. Hence, it was best suited to the name Dark Millstone. According to the information that Sanctuary Alliance gathered, the Dark Millstone first appeared at the Holy Kingdom of Celestial Fire and it had descended from the sky above. From the crack in the void above the Holy Kingdom of Celestial Fire, it had expanded and then destroyed the Holy Kingdom of Celestial Fire. Then the Dark Millstone had started moving towards other holy kingdoms. Until now, besides the Holy Kingdom of Celestial Fire that the Dark Millstone first landed on, it passed two other holy kingdoms and both holy kingdoms shared the same outcome as the Holy Kingdom of Celestial Fire. They were crushed to pieces and countless cultivators didn't even stand a chance of escape. Then the Dark Millstone was still moving around. Red Dragon King sounded solemn. The great emperors were astonished at the news. There were 3 holy kingdoms that had vanished into thin air in such a short period of time. The Dark Millstone was so terrifying. Not only that. An old voice was heard from Ancestor Tianqin. Then Ancestor Tianqin also looked unprecedentedly solemn. At the very moment I received the news, I immediately sent an Emperor God from Sanctuary Alliance who was nearby to check on the Dark Millstone. The Emperor God just sent me an update that the Dark Millstone is constantly growing in size and power as it moves around. What? The great Emperor's faces grew grave. The Dark Millstone was already so terrifying, but it was still constantly growing in size and power? The Dark Millstone had to be destroyed this instant. A great Emperor said. Yes, we have to destroy it now. Worst comes to worst, we have to stop it. It crushed 3 holy kingdoms in such a short period of time. Although there are many holy kingdoms in eternal chaotic world, we still couldn't afford to be tormented like that. If the Dark Millstone couldn't be destroyed, the entire eternal chaotic world would be doomed. The other great emperors commented. They could see how threatening the Dark Millstone was. It was a great threat. If it wasn't destroyed anytime soon, it would absolutely cause great danger. In the end, the Dark Millstone might even wipe out the entire eternal chaotic world. Ancestor Tianqin, did any of our great emperor from Sanctuary Alliance try to destroy the Dark Millstone? Jian Wushuang asked. He looked extremely solemn. Ancestor Tianqin looked at Jian Wushuang and nodded faintly. When Sanctuary Alliance received the news, there was a great emperor who tried and the great emperor is Emperor Bai himself. Emperor Bai? The great emperors around the round table looked at Emperor Bai, who hadn't spoken since the very beginning. Emperor Bai was the strongest one in Sanctuary Alliance. He took action personally. What happened? Jian Wushuang asked closely. He failed. Ancestor Tianqin let out a sigh. How is this possible? The great emperors were taken by surprise. Emperor Bai took action personally, but he couldn't break the Dark Millstone. Then Emperor Bai spoke. The Dark Millstone isn't simple. Not only did it contain terrifying power that could destroy everything, there was also a great formation on its surface. The great formation is very magical, very powerful. Its defense power was unbelievable. The defense power of the Great Formation continuously improved as the Dark Millstone moved. I think the Great Formation on the surface of the Dark Millstone and its setup is not any weaker than the one around the ancient battlefield that merged together with Spacetime Storm. Everyone was shocked once again. Jian Wushuang was shocked too. The great formation around the ancient battlefield was created by his master, Xian. The great formation could be described as earth-shattering. It was an absolutely unbelievable skill. However, the great formation on the surface of the Dark Millstone could compare favorably with the formation that merged with Spacetime Storm. Although it was merely Emperor Bei's personal opinion and there might be a discrepancy, it was enough to show how powerful the great formation around the Dark Millstone was. There is such a powerful great formation set up around the Dark Millstone? Couldn't it be that the Dark Millstone is controlled by someone? Great Emperor Colored Glaze exclaimed in surprise. Everyone went quiet when they heard her comment. Everyone had already thought of the possibility. The great formation was definitely set up by someone. As there was a great formation around the Dark Millstone, it meant that someone was controlling the Dark Millstone and that person was most likely in the Dark Millstone. In Eternal Chaotic World, only the two dark forces, Holocaust Sect and Acheron Palace, have the ability to produce the Dark Millstone and do such a thing, Emperor Bai said in a deep voice. For the past years, the two dark forces had been preparing to attack. I predicted that they would do something major in these few years and it happened as expected. Now that they have made the Dark Millstone, if Sanctuary Alliance doesn't figure out a way to destroy it or stop it, the entire Eternal Chaotic World will be destroyed. This crisis is a great danger and Eternal Chaotic World's existence is at stake. Chapter 2005 Expert Troop, Danger. A danger where Eternal Chaotic World's existence was at stake. The great emperor's on the spot and were extremely sure of that. Emperor Bai, a purple-haired woman, stood up. The purple-haired woman was Great Emperor Ji Luo in the 11th place on Heaven and Earth's supreme ranking list. She was also a master of a sanctuary. As the great formation outside the Dark Millstone is so powerful and even Emperor Bai can't have any effect on it, there is only one way to resolve the great formation and to destroy the Dark Millstone completely. We have to gather all Almighties in Eternal Chaotic World and Sanctuary Alliance. It'd be best if we could have a complete war formation or unique formation to break formation with formation. We could stand a chance to fight against the Dark Millstone, Great Emperor Ji Luo suggested. I was thinking the same, Emperor Bai nodded faintly. But it isn't easy to gather all forces in the entire Eternal Chaotic World at such short notice. On top of that, we have to form a war formation. On the other hand, the Dark Millstone is getting stronger too quickly and its travel speed is not slow either. Looking at its travel track, it is aiming at where the 10 sanctuaries are. At most, it would take a few thousand years for the Dark Millstone to appear in the 10 sanctuaries. But most importantly, we didn't even have time for a few thousand years because the size of the Dark Millstone would be at least a few dozen times bigger after a few thousand years. By then, we won't be able to have any effect on it even if we gather all Almighties in Eternal Chaotic World. 1,000 years. 1,000 years at most. Within 1,000 years, if we don't destroy the Dark Millstone or stop it, Eternal Chaotic World will definitely be exterminated. Everyone was shocked. 1,000 years? To great emperors, 1,000 years passed like a blink of an eye. However, they had to figure out a way to destroy the Dark Millstone within 1,000 years. 1,000 years? 1,000 years' time is too short. I'm afraid Sanctuary Alliance won't be able to prepare much within such a short period of time, Great Emperor Ji Luo said. That's right. Hence, Red Dragon King Tianqin and I discussed it and we plan to send out an expert troop to barge into the Dark Millstone. Then, Sanctuary Alliance will figure out a way to collaborate from within with forces from without. Then, Sanctuary Alliance won't need to prepare much but is only required to prepare some experts to form a great formation. That should be sufficient to influence the Dark Millstone, Emperor Bai said. Expert troop. The great emperors exchanged a look and nodded. It was naturally difficult to break a powerful formation with an external attack. However, if it was carried out from within, it would be much easier. Emperor Bai, didn't you say the great formation was extremely tough? It is hard to affect it even when you attacked it personally. Under such circumstances, it wouldn't be easy for us to break an opening on the great formation and send our experts in, right? Great Emperor Ji Luo creased her eyebrows and asked. It wouldn't happen if we forcefully barged in by force, but Sanctuary Alliance's foundation was solid after being established for so many years. If we were to play some tricks, we would still be able to break an opening to get in. However, the opening wouldn't last for long. It would only be a split second and we could only send 4 people at most. Hence, there will only be 4 people in the expert troop. As for the 4 people, Red Dragon, Tianqin and I already discussed it, Emperor Bai said. Then the great emperors looked at Emperor Bai. They knew that there might be a large number of experts from Holocaust Sect and Acheron Palace in the Dark Millstone. It might even be their base camp or lair. It would be extremely dangerous to barge inside even if one were a great emperor. Hence, these 4 members of expert troop definitely couldn't be reckless. Abysmal Saint Master. Emperor Bai looked at Abysmal Saint Master by his side. Mr. Emperor Bai, although Abysmal Saint Master was arrogant and ambitious, and had been dying to stand on par with Emperor Bai or even above him, he would maintain an appropriate reverence when he was in front of Emperor Bai as he wasn't powerful enough yet. Among the great emperors in Sanctuary Alliance, you and Red Dragon are the strongest besides myself. But Red Dragon has got other matters to attend to and couldn't take up this task. So, you will be the leader of the 4-member expert troop to barge into the Dark Millstone. Will you? Emperor Bai said. Yes. Abysmal Saint Master nodded in agreement without hesitation. Although he was arrogant and jealous, he understood right and wrong. The crisis concerned the life and death of eternal chaotic world. As one of the higher-ups in Sanctuary Alliance, Abysmal Saint Master was naturally obligated. Ji Luo, Emperor Bai then looked at Great Emperor Ji Luo. Although you're not the strongest of the great emperors, your manipulation power of spacetime power is the best amongst all great emperors. Especially when you have the few secret skills of spacetime, you would be extremely important at crucial times. Among the 4 members, all you need to do is to assist the other 3, including yourself, to flee. Yes. Great Emperor Ji Luo nodded heavily. Emperor Jiu Qiao. Emperor Bai spoke again. Mr. Emperor Bai, an elder in a gray robe, stood up. He was scrawny and he had a crescent moon mark in between his eyebrows. The aura that he gave out was unique too. Emperor Jiu Qiao was in 9th place on Heaven and Earth Supreme ranking list. In terms of power, he was stronger than Great Emperor Ji Luo by 1 notch, but he wasn't that much stronger either. No one knows what is inside the Dark Millstone, especially the spacetime within. If the 4-member expert troop from Sanctuary Alliance enters the Dark Millstone and can't connect to the outside world using a communication token, we will need your doppelganger, Emperor Bai explained. Yes, Emperor Jiu Qiao didn't refuse. When Emperor Bai said that he was going to send a 4-member expert troop, he already foresaw himself being one of the members. Because he was the only one who had a doppelganger. It was very useful to send messages between the Dark Millstone and Sanctuary Alliance. The last person. Emperor Bai paused and looked at all the surrounding great emperors. The great emperors looked solemn. In the end, Emperor Bai's gaze stopped on a young man with a sword on his back. Jian Wushuang, Emperor Bai said. Me? Jian Wushuang was stunned. He wasn't nervous, nor was he afraid to go into the Dark Millstone. But he was shocked. Not only him, all the surrounding great emperors were shocked too. One should know that the 3 great emperors that Emperor Bai mentioned, Abysmal Saint Master was strongest in power. Hence, it would require his fighting power to deal with some danger when they entered the Dark Millstone. Emperor God Ji Luo was an expert in spacetime. She could help the members of expert troop to flee at a critical moment. Emperor Jiu Qiao had a doppelganger. In other words, he had a soul that shared 2 bodies. No matter what happened to his original body, his doppelganger would immediately know. In short, the 3 of them were extremely useful to the expert troop. However, what could Jian Wushuang bring to the table? Chapter 2006 Jian Wushuang's value? Just as everyone was confused, Emperor Bai spoke again. No one knows what is in the Dark Millstone. Under such circumstances, the 4 members of the expert troop from Sanctuary Alliance have to be extremely careful. Jian Wushuang, you are an inverse cultivator and you have a unique ability that could be put to use. Besides, unlike the other 3, you are still in Sir God realm. There are many things that would be too obvious if the 3 great emperors were to do them in the Dark Millstone. So, you will have to do on their behalf. Understood? Jian Wushuang nodded. The other great emperors understood then too. It was true that Jian Wushuang was just a Sir God and he wouldn't catch so much attention as compared to the other 3 great emperors. Hence, it would be much more convenient for him to carry out some task. This crisis concerns the life and death of eternal chaotic world. Before such a crisis, everyone should prioritize the situation. Everyone here, including the experts under your control, have to put down all resentment. Do you understand? Emperor Bai looked around and intentionally lingered his gaze on Abysmal Saint Master for a while. Everyone knew that Abysmal Saint Master and Jian Wushuang were unhappy with one another and they had been in a fight before. Now both of them were in the expert troop. If they were to have conflict, they would be in big trouble. Abysmal Saint Master noticed Emperor Bai's gaze and nodded heavily. Colored glaze, Emperor Bai spoke again. Mr. Emperor Bai, Great Emperor-colored glaze stood up. The unique concealment skill that you obtained from the ancient battlefield is useful for the expert troop. Share it with the four of them, Emperor Bai commanded. Great Emperor-colored glaze had a unique concealment skill. The concealment skill could reign in one's aura entirely without leaking any bit. If they were to perform this skill when they hid, even when a great emperor spread his soul power, he wouldn't be able to find them. It was absolutely the strongest concealment skill in Sanctuary Alliance. Such a skill was really useful for the expert troop. For instance, if the experts from Acheron Palace and Holocaust Sect were to be hunting for them in the Dark Millstone, as long as they leave their sights and hide, the enemy could only dream of finding them. Sure, Great Emperor-colored glaze didn't hesitate and agreed. Although she was the only one with the concealment skill, she knew her limits as the existence of eternal chaotic world was at stake. Jian Wushuang, Emperor Bai looked at Jian Wushuang again. Lineage of Star's secret skill of Star Palace is powerful. Anyone who can cultivate it will have an extra trump card. The four of you should form expert troops to barge into the Dark Millstone. It is very dangerous. The four of you having an extra trump card will mean having another layer of defense. So, I hope you will share the secret skill of Star Palace as well. The secret skill of Star Palace? Jian Wushuang thought but instantly decided, sure. Although the secret skill of Star Palace was precious and it could even be described as the biggest trump card that Lineage of Star had. Eternal Chaotic World was at the brink of extermination. If Eternal Chaotic World were to disappear, Lineage of Star naturally would go down altogether. Under such a situation, Jian Wushuang, of course, wouldn't be loath to share it. Forget about the fact that it was only for Abysmal Saint Master, Great Emperor Ji Luo and Emperor Jiu Qiao to inherit the secret skill of Star Palace. Even if Sanctuary Alliance wanted all experts in Eternal Chaotic World to inherit the secret skill in the end, he wouldn't hesitate. That's great. The four of you shall head back and get ready. Leave within 10 years' time, Emperor Bai said. Yes. Jian Wushuang, Abysmal Saint Master, Great Emperor Ji Luo and Emperor Jiu Qiao took the order. Jian Wushuang, stay back. The others can be dismissed too, Emperor Bai waved. Very soon the great emperors left. Eternal Chaotic World was facing such great danger. The great emperors who were the higher-ups in Eternal Chaotic World naturally came to the forefront and they had to be prepared at their fastest speed. They would collaborate with the four members' expert troop who would barge into the Dark Millstone from within with force so they could destroy the Dark Millstone. In the spacious Presbytery Pavilion, there was only Jian Wushuang and Emperor Bai. Actually, in the beginning, Red Dragon and Tianqin recommended that Zisu should go. After all, not only is Zisu powerful, he has many skills. He would be helpful to the four members' expert troop. In the end, I chose you. Jian Wushuang, you should know the reason behind this. Emperor Bai looked at Jian Wushuang. Yes, it's because of the defensive power of an inverse cultivator, Jian Wushuang replied. Yes, Emperor Bai smiled faintly, an inverse cultivator is ridiculously amazing. The unique capability of one on the seventh step of inverse cultivation, the others might not know it but you and I are both inverse cultivators and we know clearly that it means that the perfect chaotic divine body is almost immortal. With such power, you will be even more useful than Zisu in the four members' expert troop. Jian Wushuang looked cold. Perfect chaotic divine body, even when his divine body collapsed entirely, it could be reorganized as long as his divine power was sufficient. Although Jian Wushuang had only reached the first stage and the divine power that he possessed was only enough to reorganize his divine body 4 times, he couldn't be truly defined as unrivaled. However, in terms of defensive power or his ability to suffer a beating, only Emperor Bai from Sanctuary Alliance was stronger than him. Mr. Emperor Bai, don't worry. I will give my all in the trip into the Dark Millstone, but as for Abysmal Saint Master... Jian Wushuang frowned. Don't worry too much about Abysmal Saint Master. I know him well enough. He is arrogant and easily jealous. In simpler terms, he is narrow-minded and he couldn't take anyone stronger than him. However, he knows what's right and what's wrong. In the trip into the Dark Millstone, he wouldn't cause you any trouble, nor will he scheme against you because he himself knows that it's extremely dangerous for the 4 of you to barge in. If you die in there, there will be no benefit to him at all, Emperor Bai reassured him. I'm all right then, Jian Wushuang nodded. With his current power and skills, he wasn't afraid of Abysmal Saint Master, nor was he worried that he was being schemed against. However, the mission was no trivial matter. Jian Wushuang didn't wish for unnecessary trouble that would affect the success or failure of the mission. Oh yeah, I have an elixir here. I prepared it for you. This is also the reason I made you stay back, Emperor said and he flipped his wrist. He took out a white elixir that was the size of a pigeon egg. There was only one elixir, but it gave out a tempting fragrance. It instantly filled the entire Presbytery Pavilion. If there were other experts in Presbytery Pavilion, it absolutely would stir their greed. Chapter 2007 7 Treasure Divine Elixir. Mr. Emperor Bai, this is? Jian Wushuang looked at the elixir in Emperor Bai's hand. He could feel that the elixir was unusual. Even he couldn't help but felt greed in him the moment he saw the elixir. This is 7 Treasure Divine Elixir, Emperor Bai smiled. I got this elixir by sheer luck a long time ago. It was in the first era when I was wandering in the ancient battlefield. I found 5 in total and I am only left with 2 now. This elixir is amazing. Even in ancient times, it was considered a top-grade item. Many experts in ancient times, including those existences above Great Emperor, would use this elixir at crucial times. After consuming this elixir, the super experts who were above Great Emperor could recover their divine power instantly. To inverse cultivators like us, it is shockingly useful. You know that we inverse cultivators could constantly fuel our divine body as long as we had enough divine power. Even if I consumed this 7 Treasure Divine Elixir, it could instantly recover more than an ordinary level of divine power. To you who are only in the first stage, your divine power could be instantly recovered after you consume this elixir. Jian Wushuang was delighted when he heard that. His divine power could be instantly recovered when he consumed the elixir. It was considered another life to an ordinary cultivator, but to an inverse cultivator, it was even more useful. His current divine power enabled him to reorganize his divine body for 4 times, which meant 4 extra lives. With the addition of 7 Treasure Divine Elixir, his divine body could be reorganized 8 times. Just how amazing was that? The elixir is what I prepared for your troop. But among the 4 members in the troop who are going to enter the Dark Millstone, only you can give full play to the power of this elixir. So, I am giving it to you, Emperor Bai passed the 7 Treasure Divine Elixir to Jian Wushuang. Thank you, Emperor Bai, Jian Wushuang quickly thanked him. Everything is for eternal chaotic world. Go ahead and get ready, Emperor Bai waved. Jian Wushuang left then. There was only Emperor Bai left in Presbytery Pavilion. Emperor Bai watched Jian Wushuang as he disappeared at the end, and there was a strange light twinkling in his eyes. In actual fact, he had arranged for Jian Wushuang to go into the Dark Millstone not only because Jian Wushuang would be helpful to the troop, but because there was also another reason. Emperor Bai wanted Jian Wushuang to receive greater training. It was about time for eternal chaotic world. It at most had another 1,000 years to go. By then, the 2 dark forces would definitely incite war. In merely 1,000 years, Jian Wushuang wouldn't improve much with ordinary training. Hence, he had to be sent for polishing. Jian Wushuang immediately started to make arrangements when he returned to Greenfire World. No one knew what would happen in the Dark Millstone. Jian Wushuang wasn't even sure if he could come out alive. Hence, Jian Wushuang naturally had to make the necessary arrangements. In the lofty palace. Father, after I leave, you shall take over the great formation that merged with Spacetime Storm. As for those Dao soldiers, Hall Master Yuan and you can work together to take care of them. If there is any problem in Greenfire World can discuss with Lineage of Star. Jian, stay back in Greenfire World to serve as a deterrent to other experts. Hall Master Yuan, Jian Wushuang passed down the tasks one by one. Everyone who was seated in the hall looked extremely solemn. They all knew that Jian Wushuang was going to a dangerous place and it was hard to predict his life and death. Third brother. Do you have to go no matter what? Wang Yuan looked at him. No matter what, Jian Wushuang nodded. This is not only for eternal chaotic world, it is also for Greenfire World. This crisis concerns the life and death of eternal chaotic world. If we fail, the entire eternal chaotic world will vanish. Greenfire World naturally won't exist either. All experts in eternal chaotic world will be obligated. Jian Wushuang was determined. Everyone around him saw his determination and didn't pursue further. Then Jian Wushuang began to prepare for his trip into the Dark Millstone. Although 10 years' time wasn't long, at least he was given some time to prepare himself. It's a pity that the Dark Millstone appeared all of a sudden and a little too early. If it had appeared a little later, by about 100 years, I would be able to cultivate the ancient tribe's first volume of immemorial celestial body. By then, my divine body and my divine power would improve again. Regardless of if it was my overall power or my defensive power, both would improve tremendously. Then, I would be even more confident in surviving. It's a pity, Jian Wushuang found it a regrettable matter, but he had no alternatives. The crisis had descended and he had to deal with it. In 10 years' time, Great Emperor Colored Glaze had passed the four of them the concealment skill. Besides, Abysmal Saint Master, Great Emperor Ji Luo and Emperor Jiao Qiao had made a trip to Green Fire World one after another, and they had received the inheritance of secret skill of Star Palace in Lineage of Star. Although the three Great Emperor had received the perfect inheritance of the secret skill of Star Palace, the three of them could only perform the first volume, no matter how hard they tried. It was impossible for them to even perform the second volume. It seemed that only Jian Wushuang and the Star Palace Master, who had already passed away, had cultivated the second volume successfully in the entire eternal chaotic world. Star Palace Master had once absorbed the blood essence of an expert from 7-star Black Sect, but Jian Wushuang, it was smooth sailing for his cultivation. Not to mention the second volume, he had already cultivated the third volume successfully. Of course, even the first volume itself would be a great trump card for the three great emperors. It was a pity that the trump card would require a long time until it could be performed the next time again. Hence, they didn't dare to use it recklessly. 10 years passed by very quickly. Jian Wushuang was well prepared and he handed down all the tasks. Then he left. An eternal chaotic world in the boundless dark void. It was still extremely far from the 10 cultivation sanctuaries. In the dark void then, there was a huge black steel ball that was far bigger than the size of a holy kingdom spinning and traveling forward. Everywhere it passed would vanish. There was no space for struggle. In the dark void near the dark millstone, swoosh, 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 there were a few figures that appeared simultaneously. The higher-ups from Sanctuary Alliance, led by Emperor Bai, Red Dragon King, Ancestor Tianqin, and the others were there. Of course, Jian Wushuang, Abysmal Saint Master, Great Emperor Ji Luo, Emperor Jiao Qiao were there too. Their gazes were fixed upon the huge black steel ball before them. Chapter 2008 Barge In. This is the Dark Millstone? Everyone looked astonished. Previously, they had only seen the Dark Millstone through the mirror image, and the mirror image hadn't shown the entire scene. Plus, 10 years had passed. The size of the Dark Millstone had grown bigger significantly. The speed of growth of this Dark Millstone is shocking. Its power is constantly growing stronger too. We have to destroy it at our fastest possible speed, Ancestor Tianqin said in a deep voice. Don't delay anymore. The four of you, are you ready? Emperor Bai looked at the four of them. Jian Wushuang, Abysmal Saint Master, Great Emperor Ji Luo and Emperor Jiao Qiao exchanged a look and nodded solemnly. Emperor Bai squinted his eyes and then took out a transparent pearl. The transparent pearl contained a grayish mysterious power and there was faint lighting flashing within. This is... Jian Wushuang was surprised. He had seen this transparent pearl before. XXX, it was used to break formation or prohibition. A long time ago, when Jian Wushuang had yet to leave Greenfire World, they took out XXX when they fought with Jian Kingdom. However, the power of the XXX that they had taken out back then and the one Emperor Bai was holding was vastly different. This is the top-grade XXX from ancient times. XXX of this level can forcefully tear an opening in the Great Formation, no matter how powerful it is. However, the opening will only last for a split second. The four of you have to seize the chance to get inside. Yes, the four of them nodded. Emperor Bai took action. He drove the pearl with his divine power and he threw it at the huge dark millstone that was spinning. The moment the XXX appeared on the surface of the dark millstone, there was a dim light on the dark millstone. The dim light looked extremely mysterious but powerful. As the XXX exploded, a terrifying power exploded too. It tore everything and the dim light tore a gap big enough for a person to pass through. Right now, there was a flash of light in Emperor Bai's eyes. Let's go. Abysmal Saint Master roared. Then, the four of them who were ready long ago plunged through the gap without hesitation and disappeared behind the gap. The gap immediately vanished right after they plunged through. They're in. Emperor Bai and the rest waited in the void outside the dark millstone and all of them looked solemn. They didn't know what was in the dark millstone, nor did they know what Jian Wushuang and the troop would encounter. However, because they didn't know, someone had to step forth to find out. I hope that the four of them will return from the dark millstone alive, Ancestor Tianqin said. They not only have to walk out alive, more importantly, they also have to collaborate with us to destroy this dark millstone. Otherwise, if the dark millstone continues to spin, it will be only a matter of time until we all die, Red Dragon King said in a deep voice. The surrounding great emperors heard and nodded simultaneously in agreement. They knew the responsibility that the four members carried. It could be said that they were a crucial factor if Eternal Chaotic World could survive the crisis. The four of them carry a heavy responsibility. The other experts outside the dark millstones are equally important too. We can't be careless, Emperor Bai said. Yes, the surrounding great emperor's gazes were cold. In the huge, dark millstones, Jian Wushuang and the others went through the gap and appeared within a huge formation. This great formation is complicated. Not only does it have the powerful defense power on its exterior, there are also many prohibitions internally. Emperor Jiuqiao's face grew grave. Ji Luo, you're the best at the manipulation of spacetime power and you're the best among the four of us in formation. Hurry up and lead us out of this prohibition, Abysmal Saint Master said. I'll try. Great Emperor Ji Luo looked solemn. She walked at the front while Abysmal Saint Master, Jian Wushuang and Emperor Jiuqiao followed behind her. Jian Wushuang, Abysmal Saint Master suddenly looked at Jian Wushuang as they traveled forward. Although you and I had a conflict, this is no trivial matter. I hope you draw a clear distinction between private and public interests. I hope you will follow my instructions. Don't worry. As long as you do not scheme against me or are obviously sending me to death, I naturally will follow your instructions, Jian Wushuang replied coldly. Good. Abysmal Saint Master glanced at Jian Wushuang again but didn't say anything more. Just as the four of them entered the dark millstone and traveled forward in the prohibition, in the depth of the dark millstone, there were 3 lofty thrones towering in the boundless dark void. Lung Rushue the savage man and the blurry bloody man sat there. In front of them, there was a man in a black robe who knelt down politely. Misters, I have already located the location of the few people who barged in via the Great Formation. However, they are extremely powerful and they have already broken through the strongest obstacle. Although there are some prohibitions in front of them, it will be impossible to kill or even block them, the man in the black robe reported. If prohibitions won't kill them, why not send a few experts to kill them? The savage man spoke with a bright void. Sure, but judging by their travel speed, they would have definitely passed the prohibited range and appeared in our world by the time our experts arrive. In other words, we can't kill them before they enter the world, the man in the black robe said. The savage man's expression grew in distress. If the few of them were to really enter the world, there would be many secrets about the world that would be exposed. Forget it. It is only a matter of time until they are exposed. Which territory will they appear in after they pass the prohibition? The savage man asked. Looking at their current location, they should appear near Silver-Winged God Mansion, the man in the black robe replied. Silver-Winged God Mansion? The blurry, bloody man looked down. As we can lock onto their location, send experts over immediately. Kill them at the fastest possible speed. It'd be best if it happens before they receive any information about this world or even share the information before they die. Ling Zong is near Silver-Winged God Mansion, right? Tell him to rush over. With him there, these few people won't even think about fleeing. Want to resolve this grand formation from within and destroy this world entirely? Dream on. Yes. The man in black took the command and sent it down immediately. Jian Wushuang and the others weren't aware that they were being watched since the very moment they entered the dark millstone. Chapter 2009 Three Emperors World. In the boundless void, a boundless stretch of blue sky with white clouds. At the very end of the void, burble. The void was distorted, then there were 4 figures that came out. We're out. We are finally out. Jian Wushuang, Abysmal Saint Master, Great Emperor Ji Luo, Emperor Jiuqiao let out a breath of relief. They were in a region covered under prohibitions earlier and they had to keep their guards up. They didn't dare to let loose at all. Until then, they finally walked out from the region covered under prohibitions. This is. The 4 of them looked at the surrounding void in shock. Everything they saw was peaceful. It was entirely different from the dark millstone that was constantly spinning and destroying everything on the outside. As expected, there is something different inside, Jian Wushuang muttered. Could there be a territory for human cultivators in the dark nirvana? Emperor Jiuqiao creased his eyebrows and asked. The dark millstone is so huge. The moment it appeared, it was already of the size of a holy kingdom. With such a great size, it isn't strange for there to be human cultivators, Abysmal Saint Master replied. Let's go, let's search around. Jian Wushuang nodded faintly. Then the 4 of them started searching the region. When they were searching, they realized that the universe that they were in had great cultivation environment. Although it couldn't compare favorably with Greenfire World, it was slightly stronger than the 10 cultivation sanctuaries in Eternal Chaotic World. In no time they saw a city in which humans resided. The city was quite big and there were countless human cultivators. The 4 of them stood in the void near the city and they concealed their auras. Great Emperor colored glazes conceal skill is pretty good. When we use this, even a great emperor might not be able to find us if they pass by, Great Emperor Jiluo said. It is great if we use it when we are hiding. If we are in front of our enemy, they will be able to tell our realm at first glance, Emperor Jiuqiao said. The three of us are great emperors and we are too eye-catching. This soul-probing mission will be yours then. Abysmal Saint Master looked at Jian Wushuang. Sure, Jian Wushuang didn't refuse. He immediately spread his soul power. In an instant he covered the entire city before him. The cultivators in the city appeared in Jian Wushuang's eyes. Oh. Jian Wushuang looked surprised. The quality of the cultivators in the Dark Millstone is quite high. Many of the cultivators in this city are close to universe god level and there are many real gods too. However, the strongest among them was only a chaotic real god. Chaotic real god? That's too weak. We wouldn't get any valuable information from him. Let's search further. The cultivation environment here is so great, there must be many almighties. Let's figure out a way to find one, Abysmal Saint Master said. The other three nodded in agreement. The four of them didn't stay in the city but immediately continued to search the border of the city. Before long, the four of them had found the first almighty in the Dark Millstone. The almighty was merely a Sir God and he was also in the city. In a tall pavilion. A middle-aged man in a black robe sat there with his eyes closed while he enjoyed a glass of wine in his hands. Suddenly, swoosh, there was a figure that appeared behind the middle-aged man in a black robe without any sign. Who is it? The middle-aged man in a black robe was shocked and instantly kept his guard up. As he turned, he saw a young man in a crimson robe with a sword smiling at him. I have something that I'd like to ask you. I hope you can answer me with full honesty, Jian Wushuang said with a smile. The middle-aged man in a black robe noticed that Jian Wushuang's aura was only an early-stage chaotic realm, Sir God level. He became less vigilant. However, his face became cold, humph. Although I don't know who you are, aren't you too rude to question me? Rude? Jian Wushuang rubbed his nose and the next moment, hong. There was a bolt of terrifying divine might that pressed on the middle-aged man in a black robe. The middle-aged man in a black robe was originally pissed off at Jian Wushuang's rude intrusion and tone, but the pressing of the divine might shook him. He was even shivering in fear. Such divine might. Middle-stage chaotic realm or at least peak middle-stage chaotic realm. He might even be at the peak of chaotic realm. My goodness. The middle-aged man in a black robe was astonished and he looked terrified. Now do you still think that I'm rude? Jian Wushuang smiled. Master of Double Dragon Region, Tian Xingzi greets Mr. Go ahead and ask me any questions. I will tell you everything I know, the middle-aged man in a black robe said politely. As expected. No matter which part of the world I am in, power speaks for itself. It is as such an eternal chaotic world and the same applies to the internal world inside the Dark Millstone. Jian Wushuang raised his eyebrows as he began to question. He naturally asked questions about the universe. The middle-aged man in a black robe, also the master of Double Dragon Region, Tian Xingzi answered frankly. Then, Jian Wushuang finally had a basic understanding of the universe. The universe that he was in was a big world. A completely huge world that existed for a very long time. The big world was named Three Emperors' World. The name was said to derive from the legend whereby there were three experts that appeared in the world before and the three experts were referred to as the Three Emperors. Over the years they were worshipped by countless experts in the world. The myth said that Three Emperors' World was made by the Three Emperors. As time flew past, the Three Emperors were nowhere to be seen. The layout of the Three Emperors' World was very clear too. The territories were segregated into three different levels. The first level, which was the base, was called a region. Region could also be explained as territories. In a region, there would be cities in various sizes and also countless cultivators. In every region, there would be a master that was widely acknowledged. The masters of the region were mostly experts of an early-stage chaotic realm, also known as Sir God level in Eternal Chaotic World. Above region there was God Mansion. Legend said that there was a total of 1,300 regions in Three Emperor World. The 1,300 regions formed 84 God Mansions. Each God Mansion ruled over 10 regions and every God Mansion had a master as well. The master of God Mansion was normally an expert in middle stage chaotic realm, also known as Emperor God in Eternal Chaotic World. Chapter 2010 The Master of Silver-Winged God Mansion. Above God Mansion was State. The biggest territory in Three Emperor World would be State. A state conquered 7 God Mansion. Hence, the 84 God Mansions were under 12 states. Every state would have a supreme leader. According to Tian Xingzi, the leader of the state would be one who reached peak chaotic realm level. 12 state leaders, 84 master of god mansions, 1,300 regions. Jian Wushuang was astonished at the piece of information that he retrieved. He wanted to know more information from Tian Xingzi, such as the secret of the world. The world was in the huge, dark millstone that destroyed everything. There was definitely a great secret. It was a pity that what Tian Xingzi knew was limited. He who was only a master of a region, an ordinary early-stage chaotic realm, naturally wouldn't qualify to know much about the secret of Three Emperors' world. Double Dragon region is under which god mansion? Who is the master? And how can I find the master? Jian Wushuang asked. Mr. Double Dragon region is in Silver-Winged God Mansion. Tian Xingzi immediately replied. After finding out everything that he needed to know. Swoosh. Suddenly, a sword light slashed and chopped Tian Xingzi's head directly. Jian Wushuang was an outsider and he only asked Tian Xingzi the general questions about Three Emperors' world. Tian Xingzi definitely would find him suspicious. Hence, he naturally couldn't stay alive. The moment Tian Xingzi died. Swoosh, swoosh, swoosh. There were 3 figures that appeared next to Jian Wushuang and they were naturally Abysmal Saint Master and the other 2 members. Did you hear that? Jian Wushuang looked at the 3 of them. Their expressions were extremely solemn. 1,300 regions. Every master of a region would be a Sir God. In other words, there would be a total of 1,300 Sir God experts. Now, there are 84 masters of God Mansion, which are 84 Emperor God experts. Lastly, the 12 state leaders, which are 12 great emperors. Great Emperor Ji Luo couldn't help but be astonished. So powerful. The Three Emperors' world is so powerful. They are very powerful. Even Abysmal Saint Master nodded in agreement. These region masters, God Mansion masters and state leaders are merely those with titles. In Three Emperors' worlds that is so huge, it is impossible that all experts take up the position as the masters or leaders. There definitely are more experts that we don't know of. If all of them add up, I am afraid that their power wouldn't be any weaker than Eternal Chaotic World. Jian Wushuang and Emperor Jiuqiao frowned. The Three Emperors' world was really powerful. They could compare favorably with Eternal Chaotic World and they might even be more powerful. It was absolutely not plain guess, but it was really possible. There is a dark millstone that destroyed everything on the outside. There is Three Emperors' world with many high-standard cultivators and experts on the inside. The 4 of them looked in distressed. Regardless, let's report the information here to Emperor Bai first, Abysmal Saint Master said. Yes, Emperor Jiuqiao nodded. After they entered Three Emperors' world, their connection with the outside world was sealed off. Regardless of if it were a communication token or consciousness reincarnation, they couldn't work. However, Emperor God Jiuqiao could use his doppelganger to stay connected to Sanctuary Alliance. It was also the reason why Emperor Jiuqiao was one of the 4 members in the expert troop. In Eternal Chaotic World, in the void near the Dark Millstone, there was a lofty palace towering there. The palace maintained the same traveling speed as the Dark Millstone. In the palace, Emperor Jiuqiao's doppelganger was seated there. He reported whatever he knew about 3 Emperor worlds after he entered the Dark Millstone. When he finished, the surrounding great emperors were solemn. Too powerful. Red Dragon King spoke first. From the region master, God Mansion masters and the 12 state leaders that we know of, their fighting power of almighty level could compete against Sanctuary Alliance. If taking those experts who didn't take up the post into consideration, the power of Three Emperors' world absolutely wouldn't be any weaker than the forces in Eternal Chaotic World combined. If Holocaust Sect and Acheron Palace have hidden power, the surrounding people became quiet. The silence went on for a while until Emperor Bai finally spoke. Three Emperors' world might be very strong, but we couldn't determine if the experts in Three Emperors' worlds would come out to fight a life-and-death war against Eternal Chaotic World. Moreover, if they were to turn out in full strength, Eternal Chaotic World could still gather all forces to compete. But the most crucial part is still the Dark Millstone. If the Dark Millstone doesn't stop, no preparation or skills will be of use, no matter how many experts we have or how powerful they are. Everyone nodded. That was true. The Dark Millstone was the crucial part. Only when the Dark Millstone was completely destroyed or stopped would the Eternal Chaotic World would stand a chance to live. As for within the Dark Millstone, the experts from Three Emperors' world weren't the ones that they needed to deal with. Jiuqiao. Emperor Bai looked at Emperor Jiuqiao's doppelganger. Tell Abysmal Saint Master to find the truth behind the Three Emperors' world. It is impossible that such a powerful world wouldn't carry any core secret. The region master that they questioned earlier was probably too weak and isn't qualified to know them. Tell them to slowly go up by ranking and find a stronger God Mansion Master and to state leader. They have to unearth the secret of the world. And they have to speed up and not delay any further. Yes. Emperor Jiuqiao nodded solemnly. Emperor Jiuqiao's doppelganger shared the message to the expert troop who was far in Three Emperors' world. They received the message that Emperor Bai conveyed. Go up by ranking? Jian Wushuang squinted his eyes. I already found out where the silver-winged God Mansion Master resided from Tian Xingzi. The God Mansion Master is an Emperor God-level expert. He definitely knows more things than Tian Xingzi. Let's head to look for the silver-winged God Mansion Master. Abysmal Saint Master agreed. The four of them immediately departed according to the route that Tian Xingzi provided earlier. They traveled in the direction where the silver-winged God Mansion Master resided. However, the four of them didn't know that when they plunged in the direction of the Master of Silver-Winged God Mansion, there were a few figures that were traveling to the residence of Silver-Winged God Mansion Master in the faraway void. The few figures were soaring with a terrifying aura. Especially a bald man who was only about 5'3". Although the bald man was shorter, his body was extremely muscular. His aura was the strongest and his rage was also the most ferocious among all. His name was Ling Zong, but he had a nickname, Beast. Chapter 2011 Interrogation. Silver-Winged God Mansion Master, one of the 84 God Mansion Masters in Three Emperors' world, ruled a large territory. This is where Silver-Winged God Mansion Master stay? In the boundless void above, Jian Wushuang and the other three members stood side by side. At the end of their sights there were buildings on the mountain peak. There was a large number of palaces and pavilions towering there. There was a huge and magnificent estate above them all. According to the information they got from the Master of Double Dragon region, Silver-Winged God Mansion Master stayed in the estate. Jian Wushuang spread his soul power and sensed the existence of Silver-Winged God Mansion Master. Jiluo, I shall leave the surrounding space-time to you. Abysmal Saint Master took a look at Great Emperor Jiluo. Don't worry, I will seal off the surrounding space-time entirely to ensure Silver-Winged God Mansion Master couldn't send out any information, Great Emperor Jiluo said. She was best at controlling space-time. When she performed space-time seal, even an ordinary Great Emperor couldn't send out a message in a short time, let alone Silver-Winged God Mansion Master, who was only an Emperor God. Silver-Winged God Mansion Master is raging in anger. Jian Wushuang looked at the faraway estate with interest. If so, let us meet Silver-Winged God Mansion Master then. Abysmal Saint Master sounded cold. The four of them immediately moved. In the estate before them, there was a malicious-looking man in silver armor. His eyes were shimmering with silver light as he overlooked a bunch of people standing below him. His rage was spread across ruthlessly. Humph, Region Master Tian Xan has guts. Didn't he know about the relationship between Mu Yong family and me? How could he just watch as Mu Yong family got bullied by Su family? The malicious-looking man in silver armor, Silver-Winged God Mansion Master, roared like a raging lion. There was a fragile maiden lying in Silver-Winged God Mansion Master's arms. The maiden was beautiful and her body was charming. She was absolutely a seductress. Then she was speaking with a captivating voice. God Mansion Master, not only did Region Master Tian Xn watch as Mu Yong family was bullied by Su family, I also heard that he received benefits from Su family. The reason why Su family could be doing better than my Mu Yong family is because of Region Master Tian Xn. There's such a thing? Silver-Winged God Mansion Master was angry. He roared, send Region Master Tian Xn a message. Tell him I give him a month's time for him to send over the head of Su family personally. If he can't do it, I will take his head personally. Yes. The people standing below nodded in horror and they quickly left. Beauty, don't worry. I am here. In Silver-Winged God Mansion, no one would dare to bully your Mu Yong family. Silver-Winged God Mansion Master smiled maliciously as his eyes burned with lust when he looked at the seductress. Thank you, God Mansion Master, the charming maiden replied with her captivating voice again. Then she chuckled. She just started chuckling and she suddenly stopped. There was a flash of terror in the charming maiden's eyes. Then her body instantly slouched. It was obvious that her consciousness had been exterminated. Who? Silver-Winged God Mansion Master was angry. He was then soaring with rage and immediately spread his boundless murderous intention. Swoosh, 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 swoosh. There were four figures that substantiated before Silver-Winged God Mansion Master from nowhere. Silver-Winged God Mansion Master, who was originally soaring with murderous intention, was dumbfounded when he saw the four of them. As they stood face to face, he could see the aura that the four of them spread. Among the four of them, besides the young man carrying a sword on his back, was an early-stage chaotic realm. The other three's auras had already reached a level that made him quiver in fear. Peak chaotic realm, experts in peak chaotic realm. And there are three of them? Silver-winged God Mansion Master was shocked too. He immediately bowed at the people before him and said politely, "Ini greets three misters." He only bowed at the three of them, Abysmal Saint Master, Great Emperor Ji Luo and Emperor Jiu Qiao. As for Jian Wushuang, he didn't bother. Silver-winged God Mansion Master, you are living a great life, ha! Abysmal Saint Master smiled maliciously. He stole a glance at the cold dead body on the floor. The dead body naturally belonged to the charming beauty. The charming beauty was Silver-winged God Mansion Master's favorite woman. The moment the charming beauty died, the rage burning in his eyes showed. However, Silver-winged God Mansion Master wasn't angry at all. Murderous intention and anger were nowhere to be seen. He looked in reverence as though the person who just died had nothing to do with him. "I wonder how can I help you?" Silver-winged God Mansion Master asked politely. "Let me ask you. Reply to me honestly," Abysmal Saint Master said coldly. "Mister, go ahead and ask." Silver-winged God Mansion Master was so passionate. Abysmal Saint Master asked, and it was naturally about Three Emperors World. Such as the layout of Three Emperor World and the secret that some experts and ordinary cultivators didn't know. After some questioning, Silver-winged God Mansion Master's reply was about the same as the Master of Double Dragon Region, Tian Xingzi. Silver-winged God Mansion Master, you are a God Mansion Master. It's impossible that you only know all these, right? For instance, don't you know any secret about Three Emperor World? Abysmal Saint Master asked coldly. Silver-winged God Mansion Master felt a tug at his heartstrings. He saw the few of them earlier and subconsciously thought that the three of them were in peak chaotic realm and should be the leaders of the 12 states. However, from Abysmal Saint Master's interrogation, he could tell that the four of them seemed to be rather unfamiliar with Three Emperors World. How could a state leader be so unfamiliar with Three Emperors World? Why would they come to ask him such questions? There was no doubt that the few people in front of him were from an unusual origin. Although Silver-winged God Mansion Master was shocked, he remained composed when he said, "You must be joking. I am merely one of the God Mansion Masters. How am I qualified to know any core secrets of Three Emperors World? Besides, even if I did know, how much more would I know compared to you three misters?" The four of them exchanged a look and smiled. Silver-winged God Mansion Master is really good at talking. I think I will need to pull some tricks, then you will be willing to tell me the truth, Abysmal Saint Master said coldly. Tricks? Silver-winged God Mansion Master looked surprised. Then, Abysmal Saint Master's gaze became cold and the dark light in his body poured out and covered the entire estate. The entire estate was engulfed in boundless darkness. In the boundless darkness, Abysmal Saint Master was the ruler. You're tuning in to the Han Li's Wuxia Adventures YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.